Hey everyone, thank you so much for coming. Happy to see you all here. Just want to tell you what's in your election packet. There's a survey that we'd really appreciate it if you filled out before you leave. It's encouraging you to get involved in an election integrity committee in your county, and has some other questions for you as far as what your talents are. And then a second one talks about election integrity organizations. You would not believe how many people have formed organizations to check into our voting systems since 2020 happened. And I've got, let's see, 8 of them listed on the front, including Mark's, which is called Hand Count Roadshow. And he travels the country doing what he's doing today. And then the third one is, there's another organization called United Sovereign Americans that's examined the voter rolls in 21 states so far, I think. And they've done an election scorecard for each state, and this is Colorado's for 2022. And if you have questions about what they're asking or what they're saying on the scorecard, just turn it over and it'll answer them probably, because I asked the same questions. And then also there's a flyer for Dr. Doug Frank, who's coming to Colorado April 12th to Castle Rock. So if you're interested in coming to hear his perspective, he's a physicist, and he does a lot of digging into the data, so it's fascinating to watch. So anyway, I'll just go ahead and let Mark take over, and here we go.
All right, cool. Thank you. All right. Well, good to see you all. Thanks for inviting me into your county. I'll give you a little background on myself. I'm born and raised in Colorado native, born in Denver. Went to CU Boulder for a semester of college, and then I moved back home for a little bit. My father passed away, and then I ended up going to Golden, went to mines for like 10 years. And so I live in Lakewood now, and love my state of Colorado. I'm just not real happy with what has happened to my state of Colorado over the past 20 years, because it's not the same state, as I'm sure all of you are realizing as well. So I've got background in mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, computer science. I've done hardware, software development, cybersecurity, forensics, complex systems, and root cause analysis. So all complex systems means is I like to take complex things apart, figure out either how they work or why they're not working. And root cause analysis is exactly what that is. Not just turning it off and turning it back on. It is actually finding out what is causing it to be broken in the first place and fix that, because I'd like to be the Maytag repairman. I don't like to have the same calls over and over again. Some people are okay with that. That's not how I operate. And then I got into election technology. I never expected to be in election technology, not in a million years. I've never expected to be standing on a stage talking to anyone. But my whole life has been kind of flipped upside down since the 2020 election. And some of you may be in the same boat. It has nothing to do with party, because I used to be a Democrat. Most of my life I was a Democrat, in fact. And I changed parties back in about 2011 because I thought that would solve all my problems. But I didn't realize what the problems actually were until now. I see things very clearly. And some of you are probably somewhere in that path, beginning, middle, or maybe you're already at the end as well and realized what's actually going on. My summary of what's happened is the Democrat Party was captured many, many, many years ago by some globalists, maybe even some Marxists and communists. And they infiltrated, took that party over, and changed that party. So that party ended up not being what I thought it was, and that's why I left it. Then, turns out that same group of people have done the same thing to the Republican Party, or at least they haven't been fully successful yet, but they certainly have tried to take that party over as well. This is an infiltration problem. So not only is our country being infiltrated, but our agencies, our government, our parties are also being infiltrated. That's the easiest way to take something over, is to infiltrate it. Now, I don't think like that, but usually good people don't think about how they can take advantage of others. But bad people, that's all they think about, is how can I take advantage of other people or this situation. And unfortunately, good people become really easy victims in this because we don't think like that, so we don't see it. We don't see the patterns. And bad people, since that's all they pretty much do is engineer a way to take advantage of people, they're very, very good at it, and they're very good at keeping it very secret. I don't like bad guys. I have spent most of my life attacking the bad guys and making sure the bad guys can't keep doing what they're doing, because if they do something to me or someone I know, if I'm able to do something to stop them, then that's less people they're going to affect in the future. I'm not the kind of person that just lets it go, because when I let it go, then they're going to go take advantage of someone else. So we can't do that. We have to, at least I think, we've got to face evil, and we have to stop evil, because if we do not stop it, it just keeps perpetuating. And what's that saying? I mean, it's what keeps me driven is evil prevails when good men do nothing. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's the stupidest thing ever, because I could have just retired and enjoyed the rest of my life. Instead, I have flipped my whole life upside down and lost half of my retirement in the past 4 years. But I'm doing it because there's something bigger here. This is our country that matters. This is our kids' future generations that matter. And I want our kids that are, some of them are 10, 20 years old, 30 years old, we'll call them kids-ish. But I want that generation to enjoy their lives like we did decades ago. And life was pretty good, I'd say 1 to 3 decades ago. It's a really good time. And what we're going through right now is not comfortable. It is not enjoyable. It is something totally different. But keep in mind, you know what it used to be like. But our children right now, this is all they know. They don't even realize how good it could be here. And if they don't know how good it can be, how are they going to fight for it? They don't even know what to fight for. They don't even know that exists. And they're not equipped to deal with evil, because when you're young, you kind of have to be hurt a few times before you build that exterior thick skin and learn how to deal with criminals. So everyone in this room, we have a duty to extinguish the evil so our kids aren't going to be blindsided by it. That's it, and that's what I'm doing it for. That's it. Absolutely. Well, we all got to do it. This is a group effort. I can't do it alone. I can travel around and I can share my knowledge with everyone, and I can give you all the guidance possible, but I can't fix your county for you. You guys have to take it from here, and that's what this is going to be. I'm going to go over a little background, just so you know who it is that's sitting here telling you stuff, because you have to understand who I am. And I'm just I'm not just some random guy, but I want you to understand where I'm coming from. And then I'm going to go over everything I've learned, or most everything, over the past 4 or 5 years. I want to pass that knowledge on to you so you can more effectively navigate this situation and clean your community up. There's a lot of stuff you may not even be aware of. In fact, probably 80% of what I'm going to go over with you may not be aware of. So you're going to walk out of here much, much smarter. And what I look at this is planting seeds. And those seeds will grow over the next weeks and months and years. Let's see, what else on here? Anything big? Now, I've visited a lot of parts of the country as well over the past 4 years. I'll give you a very quick background on how I got involved in elections, though, because how do you go from having an IT company in Colorado to all of a sudden traveling the world and mostly the country giving election integrity or election reform seminars? So here's what happened. After the 2020 election, I got a call about a week later from Dennis Kane, who was Nate Kane's father, and Nate Kane is the FBI whistleblower for Uranium One. And I had met his parents at an event a few years before, and somehow his dad kept my phone number. And his dad knew that I was in IT and cybersecurity, et cetera. So he called me about 3 o'clock in the morning, a week after the 2020 election, and said, hey, my son Nate is out trying to figure out what happened with the election. Can you go out and help him? Would you be willing to? I said, where is he? Washington, D.C. I said, really don't want to go to Washington, D.C. Growing up in Evergreen, it's not a big city. But of course, I said, yes, I'd be happy. Whatever I can do. I mean, we were living in Twilight Zone shortly after that 2020 election. In fact, November 4th, about 3 o'clock in the morning, it seemed like Twilight Zone. And so I would do anything to try to get to the bottom of this. I really thought something horrible had gone on. I think someone may have stolen our election. I really thought that based on what I saw, the results of the election did not match my perception, having been very open-minded about seeing everything across the country, and I was paying really close attention to things. The results just didn't match. And so I went out there. I was told to go to a hotel, go to a particular door. I knocked on the door. They answered, and it turned out that was Sidney Powell's war room that I had just walked into. Now, she had just been evacuated, so her and her team had just left, I think, the day before. But I was there, and there were a few other people there, and I said, well, my name's Mark Cook. What can I do to help? And I said, well, what kind of skills do you have? I said, well, I'm a computer guy. Anything computer I can take care of. They said, well, we don't have any computers because Sydney and her team took all the computers when they left. They took the printers and computers and everything. I said, well, I can fix that problem. Can I borrow a car? And they threw me some keys. I grabbed the keys. I went down to the parking garage, and I started pressing the button until I could hear the car horn beep. Went, found the car, got in it, drove to a computer store, and I just started buying everything I thought that we would need as a group of people trying to figure out what happened with the election. And I ended up spending about $16,000. That was the biggest purchase I had ever made. I'll tell you, there were a lot of really happy Micro Center employees there because they were all trying to slap their stickers on everything so they could make their commission. And I filled up that little car. I went back to the hotel, and I spent the next 2 nights and 3 days setting up an entire infrastructure in this corner suite in this hotel. It was a really big suite. I mean, it had its own kitchen and everything. And I set all these computers up, laptops, desktop, server, firewall. I even found one on Craigslist, and I went and drove and picked up a server in Washington, D.C., and then I got it ready. So I went through a ton of work to get all this set up, and we started digging into the election system. Now, I only bought a few days of clothes with me. I realized after 3 days, I couldn't just abandon my fellow citizens here. They're trying to figure out what happened with the election. Most of them don't understand what a tabulator is or a ballot definition file is, or what a difference between a server and a laptop is, and what firewalls are. But I understood all that technology because that's what I use day in and day out. I've done it for almost 40 years at that point. So I realized I'm going to be there for a while. And I ended up going to Amazon and bought clothes and toiletries to last me several more days, I thought, but it turned out to be about a month and a half I lived in that hotel. I'd never stayed in a hotel for more than 2 days before. So you get to know all the staff pretty well after a month and a half. So that was the beginning of all that. I was there until December 24th, and then everyone left. But before December 24th, during that time, someone handed me the Biden laptop. Said, would you like to see this? I said, wait a minute, you mean the laptop we were told was Russian disinfo by all these intelligence agency people? I said, I'll look at it. So I looked at it, and I'll let you know, it was real. It's definitely real. I think we all know that now that they've admitted it. But isn't it crazy that they lied to us for all that time, and they had that information for at least a year prior to the election? They buried it. I mean, if that isn't election manipulation, I don't know what is, right? Burying something important like that. I saw so much stuff there. A lot of stuff you guys are all seeing now, I saw all that dysfunction in about a month and a half. Confusion, dysfunction. I saw spies. There were people trying to infiltrate everything. You didn't know who to trust. It was a bizarre environment. Politicians were there attorneys were there. I didn't know really who was who I could confide in. I was just doing my best to answer all the questions I could. I figured more knowledge is better than less knowledge. And I was creating diagrams of how the voting system worked and where you would look. If we finally got to audit a system somewhere in some county, where would you look to find the fraud? A lot of people didn't understand how the whole system worked anyway, so they had no clue where to look to find fraud. So I was creating diagrams showing, well, if there's fraud in this part of the system, look here. If there's fraud in this part of the system, look here. And eventually I saw a picture taken inside the White House, and in the background of that picture was my diagram up on the wall in the White House. So I knew that something I was doing was finally getting through. I just didn't know how much I was helping. But that was enough. Seeing that picture was enough to keep me going. So December 24th, everyone leaves. And I was all alone there. I didn't know if anyone was going to come back. And I figured, well, I'm not going to sit and spend Christmas in this hotel room by myself. So I flew back to Colorado. And when my plane landed, a friend called me and asked me over for dinner. So I went straight to his house, had dinner there, and it was, night before Christmas Day. And I called a buddy of mine that I had met when I was out in DC, and that's Garrett Ziegler, who is the founder of Marco Polo, which is the organization that did the Biden laptop report, that investigated that whole Biden laptop and did that whole thick report about all the crimes of the Biden crime family that's evidenced inside that laptop. I mean, it's beautiful, the amount of information that's in there. It incriminates, hundreds, if not thousands of people with all the evidence for the crimes. I mean, pictures and videos and emails and text messages. That was the nicest thing Hunter Biden ever did for us, is give us all that information. So I called Garrett, and Garrett was an intern for Peter Navarro, who worked obviously in the White House as well. And I called Garrett and wished him a Merry Christmas. And I wished him Merry Christmas to his wife, and he told me that his wife had left and gone home. And I was very happy that she did, because she was 9 months pregnant, and DC is not a good place for someone. And it was a war zone. There were tanks and military out all over the place. Literally tanks on a highway. It was bizarre. So I wished him Merry Christmas, and I asked him if he wanted any company, because I was worried about him. I knew what happened to Seth Rich. We know Seth Rich was the DNC staffer that was murdered some short time before that on K Street, mugged, but they didn't take his wallet. They just took a flash drive. What was on that flash drive? Now I know. I don't know if I can't share that yet, though. But Garrett said yes, he wanted some company. So I said, okay, no problem. So I thanked my friends for dinner. I went straight back to DIA, never even made it home. And my backpack was already packed. So I flew back to DC, Ubered over to Garrett's house, and I basically moved in with Garrett and lived with Garrett from December Day, we spent Christmas together, all the way through January 19th. And almost every day, I would take him in to DC, drop him off at the White House. I'd go back and work either at his place or somewhere around town, just keep working on election fraud, trying to dig into everything I possibly could. And then he'd call me at the end of the day. Sometimes it was 2, 3 in the morning, and I'd drive into DC and pick him up from the White House. And that was my life up until January 19th. And if any of you are curious who was left at the White House on the 19th, it was Donald Trump, Peter Navarro, and Garrett Ziegler. Those were the only 3 people left. Everyone else abandoned Trump and went to look for their next gig. But those 2 stayed with Trump, and I picked Garrett up. So, Steve Bannon was put in prison, and so was Peter Navarro. Okay. So I had a very unique view of what was going on inside the White House and in DC during that time, because I was right there at ground zero. And I was investigating all this election stuff all over the country, trying to figure out what is going on, looking for the patterns. Some time after that, we heard about the packet captures. Do you remember all that with the animation and all the countries attacking, all these foreign countries attacking our elections? You saw that stuff. Now, I know what a packet capture is. A packet capture is like if you took a tape recording of a conversation and you played that recording back, you could hear that conversation again. A packet capture is a digital recording of communication between computers. So if you looked at that packet capture, you could see what data went to and from the computers. So essentially, if someone did hack into our elections from somewhere else and you had a capture of that communication, that traffic, you could see exactly what went here and what went here. And I just wanted to see the packet capture, because here's what I was worried about. I was worried that someone had planted misinformation into Mike Lindell's hands and was using Mike to distract the whole country, so everyone was looking over here instead of where the fraud was over here. And I wanted to see those packets, because I knew there were people that were putting out purposeful misinformation. I saw them do it, flat out lies, complete untruths. One of them, you might have heard of this guy that was transporting ballots across state lines, and he had this semi-truck full of ballots for the Postal Service. That was actually true. I met him. I shook his hand. Now, the news told us it didn't exist. He was there in that hotel with me. So I was trying to wade through what's a lie and what's the truth, and then trying to connect all the dots of the truth to figure out what is actually going on. And I figured, if I'm even struggling with all that access, what must an average American be thinking? I got that. Total confusion, cluelessness, helplessness. What do we do? Where do we go? What can one person do? We're totally lost. I get that. I totally understand what everyone was thinking during that time. And of course, there was all kinds of infighting between all these people as well. Some of it's just chaotic. People are stressed, they're passionate, and they're just they don't have great discernment, and they start attacking each other just because they're hurting. And you probably still have that even in your own party. Kind of happens all over. Then you've got the infiltrators that go in, infiltrate, and then stoke those flames to cause that to happen inside groups as well. That's a tactic of the bad guys. And I saw that happen too, so I tried to identify who's who. Who's doing that organically, who's just really frustrated and a little bit toxic, but not a bad guy, and who is actually a bad guy that's trying to take advantage of all this. It was a lot to try to unpack and figure out. So after that, I could not get a hold of those packet captures anywhere. And then I heard Mike Lindell was going to have that symposium. And I did not want him to announce to the world again, formally, for 3 days straight, that this thing existed when it actually didn't. So I begged to go to that symposium and be on the team that examined those packet captures. And I was allowed to at the last minute. I think it was like a day before, 2 days before. I got the call. Do you want to be there? I said, yes. So I showed up. I examined those packet captures the night before the symposium, and they were not packet captures. What was handed to me was not a packet capture. It was not what it was claimed to be. It was junk, garbage. And the other people that were there that evaluated also found the same thing. We all agreed this is not a packet capture. So the topic kind of changed at the symposium a bit. And what I wanted to do is just show people what packet captures were. So I built this little demonstration environment where you could feed ballots into a system. It would suck them in, tabulate them into a database. And I showed how all that worked. I had little computer screens so people could kind of watch the databases and watch the packets going across the wire. And then all of a sudden the next day, we got word that there was a voting system image that was taken by a clerk. And that clerk was Tina Peters. Now, I met Tina there. We were in South Dakota at the time. I had no idea who Tina Peters was. I just met her there at the symposium. And then it was odd that she was also from Colorado. I thought that was kind of cool, since so am I. And I talked to Tina, and I said, I'm happy to take a look at that and let you know what it is. I said, I know there's people lying about stuff. I will honestly tell you what is on there. If you'd like me to evaluate it, I'm more than happy to do it. As long as it's done legally, I'll take a look at it. And she said, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I said, by the way, if there's something on there that some bad people don't like, I will shout it from a mountaintop along your side. I will not leave your side. I don't care who doesn't want to hear it. The truth is the truth. And so she said, thank you again. And someone put part of the image up on the screen, and I talked about it. I noticed some things in it that caught me with some concern. And I didn't get to spend much time looking at it, but they caught my eye. And fast forward a few months, I got a call. And that call was, would you be on the forensic team for the Tina Peters case? I said, absolutely, I'd be honored to do that. So a little while later, I got the images and I started examining them. And here I did report 1 and report 2 of Mesa County. I did the work. Then Doug Gould, who's also a forensic guy, he did the work identical to what I did, evaluated the same stuff, And then, because you have to peer review things. You have to have this stuff vetted. If I missed something, I didn't want to make a mistake. And we both wrote the reports together. So you should check them out if you haven't read them. You do not have to be a computer expert to read them. I purposely wrote them in a way that an average person with no computer knowledge could still follow through and get an understanding from them. I'll also share this with you. All my slides will be on the Handcount Roadshow website, so you can download this entire slide deck, so you don't have to frantically take notes or anything like that. This will be one PDF file, you download the whole thing. Just to let you know, sometimes I forget. As long as you got my information on the first slide. Did you get that? I'll give it to you real quick. That one, write down handcountroadshow.org or take a picture of it, whatever you need to do to easily, quickly remember it. I'll give you 5 seconds, maybe 7. What was that? Yeah, exactly. All right. So the reports are important to read. You deserve to know what's going on. And I'll give you a quick summary. Report 1, what I did was we looked at the before and the after image. One was right before the Secretary of State and the vendor, Dominion, showed up. And then the second image was right after they left. Now, Tina was told they were just going to turn off a QR code feature on the voting system. But they were there for 2 days. And they kicked Tina out of the office, and they kicked all of her employees out, and they covered the windows up. How long does it take you to turn off a feature on your phone or your computer? It doesn't take 2 days to turn off a feature. And what they were actually doing, because Tina didn't know, she just was very suspicious, which who wouldn't be? I would be. If I was clerk and this was my voting system for my county, and someone walked in and told me to leave my office so they could do something behind covered up windows, I would be suspicious. I'm not shocked that she was suspicious. And I would have done exactly what she did. If taking a forensic backup before and after, that's the best possible thing you could do. And if there's nothing to hide, then what's the big deal? She's supposed to retain election records anyway. Why on earth would someone be upset that she retained election records really well? That's the best possible way to retain them. Because the backup inside Dominion, when you click that little backup button, that only backs up a few of the files. It doesn't back up everything. It backs up just what they want you to back up. Everything else you'd lose if you don't have a backup. So she actually did a really good backup, the best backup you could do. She should be held up as a hero for backing up. She shouldn't be in Larimer County Jail right now. So read the reports. Report 2 shows, I wanted to see if the system was actually safe and secure. We're told this is the gold standard. We're told these systems are critical infrastructure. How dare you even doubt these systems? They're all perfect. They never make any mistakes. That's what we're told. I wanted to see if the systems are actually secure. I was just curious, did they secure them properly? I know how to secure a system. When I looked at it, what I saw was it is not secure almost in any way. In fact, there are even things that Dominion did that made it less secure than it would have been right out of the box. And their own software does that. Their own software installer opens ports in the firewall and opens it to IP addresses all over the world. That's one of the things that their software does. They even build a back door into the voting system so you can skip the Dominion stuff, go around right to the database and change the votes. It's built in. And there's multiple backdoor tools built in. So I'm sitting here going through this saying, oh my gosh, these guys are either grossly incompetent beyond belief, or they're doing this on purpose. And they had to program it on purpose to do what it did. So I just don't think that it's reasonable that the people writing the voting system software that's used for like 40% of the voters in the country, do you really think they'd be grossly negligent? Do you think they'd be grossly incompetent? Would that make sense? Or do you think they're probably very competent? They'd have to be very competent. So then, I guess it kind of narrows it down. If they're competent, yet the system is really insecure with a bunch of backdoors and stuff in it, that doesn't make it look like they're a good actor, does it? And that's what causes me a lot of concern. I've got a lot of questions for Dominion. I would love to ask Dominion a lot of questions on a national stage in front of everyone in this country. A lot of questions. So then the third report that was done by Walter Doherty and Jeff O'Donnell. I did not take part in that report other than looking at it right before it went out. And I did not want it to go out until there was an additional work done on the report. Unfortunately, I didn't get to make the call. But I'd asked for one more thing to be done because I was worried that that is what the state would accuse them of doing. And unfortunately, that's what the state ended up accusing them of doing. And I believe if we spent another week, we could have crossed that right off. I didn't want to give them an easy out. But this has been a frustrating experience from start to finish for me. So Tina Peters, to bring her back into the spotlight, I did an event on February 8th. That was the LetMyTinaGo.us event. So if you go to that website, LetMyTinaGo.us, and you want to know the whole Tina story, with most all the people that were involved from the very beginning, you need to watch that video. We also watched Selection Code, which is a documentary featuring Tina, and Let My People Go, which is a documentary, a two-part documentary. One, it shows you the election ecosystem and how the different components of it are or can be used to manipulate elections. And two, it's a tribute to our J6 political prisoners, just like Tina is a political prisoner as well. That movie, that documentary was done by Professor David Clements, and he is an amazing person and did a wonderful job creating that documentary. And we watch them both together. It was like a nationwide watch party. Tina even, at one point, she called in from jail, and we put the microphone up to the phone so you could actually listen to her, and she spoke for about 15 minutes during this Tina Day event. So it was pretty cool to be able to talk to her and listen to her. And Dr. Frank was also on it. Let's see here, Professor David Clements, Walter Doherty, Jeff O'Donnell showed up. We had Doug Gould was there. Joe Hoft actually hosted the event for us. Joe Oltman showed up and hosted for part of it as well. It's good people, just good people. And I wanted to do it because so many people around the country don't know the whole story. They've heard little bits and pieces, but they haven't heard how the whole thing fits together. And because it so involves Colorado and what's going on right now, and our very, I believe, corrupt governor, and corrupt AG, and corrupt Secretary of State. Let me correct that. I don't believe she's corrupt. I know she's corrupt without any question. I have seen her lie to not only an entire state of hers, but I've seen her lie to the entire country. She's absolutely a liar. And a lot of these people are liars. So we also played the sentencing. It's a 19-minute sentencing of Tina Peters in that. So watch it. Even if you have to watch it in several parts, watch it. All right, so let's dive in here. Now you know how I'm involved. The cold hard reality is this. You cannot win a war if you don't know you're in one. And a lot of our citizens don't think there's any problem right now. They don't realize they're in a war. It's designed like that. It's designed to keep them in the dark and distracted. That's a tactic of the enemy. Because if the people you're fighting don't even know they're in a war, you're probably going to be pretty successful at beating them, right? You all probably realize we may be in a war. Some of you may know it for sure. We are in a war, in case you're wondering. It's a war for this country. You can't win a war if you don't know the goals of your enemy. Well, the goals of the enemy is simple. They want to destroy this country, and they want to turn it into a communist nation. They want to enslave all of us, just keep increasing our taxes, taking our land, poisoning our food, water, and they want all the benefits for themselves. And they don't even mind killing a bunch of us either. In fact, they're doing it by poisoning our food supply and, of course, the COVID thing, the China virus, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can't win a war if you don't know the tactics of the enemy. So I want to help you so you understand those tactics. You don't know their tools, you're not going to win the war either. So I'm going to show you some of their tools, what they've been doing and how they've been doing it. And if you don't have a strategy yourself, you can't win a war. And if you use inferior weapons, you cannot win a war. So those are all things we need to work on. In case you're feeling somber, don't worry, we're going to crush them. As long as you get active, every county gets active, we will crush these people and we will save our country. And I guarantee we can do it. We are seeing a shift right now. We just have to increase that momentum right now, because if we don't, there's a chance they'll outplay us. So this is really important. You have to get more active than you are now. Now is our time. We have a window of opportunity that we were given, and I don't know if we're going to get another one. This is our time to save our nation. So we have our ancestors that fought, battled, lost life and limb, family and friends in a bloody war to save this country, give us this country. You don't have to be in a bloody war if you do all the right things right now. If you get involved now in the current environment of this war, we can crush them without it ever having to get worse off. I don't want to have to fight like our ancestors did. That would be very bad for a lot of people in this country. A lot of lives would be lost. It's that dangerous right now. That's how critical we are. We have an opportunity to do it nonviolently. Let's do it nonviolently, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I don't want it to go the violent route. I really don't. So here's the election illusion. We won a battle, but we lost strategic positions nationwide. Although the 24 election was pretty good to get our foot back in the door, we still lost a lot of the down ballot. If you noticed, we had a really good win on the presidential side. And I'm not talking just a Republican win. I'm not talking just a Trump win. When I look at that, who won the presidential election? The people won the presidential election. A real citizen won the presidential election. I don't care that it's Trump. I very much respect Trump. I think he's an amazing person. For him to stand up against all of this barrage of attacks and his whole family to sacrifice everything that they've spent their life building, they didn't have to do this. They put everything at risk. The man's almost been killed multiple times. They did not have to do this. They didn't do this for them. They didn't benefit from this. They've lost tremendous fortune and almost lost their lives. And their lives will never, ever be the same. And they'll have the biggest target on their back forever and ever and ever. They did this because they love this country. And they knew it was the right thing to do. And they knew that we could not allow evil to win. That good must conquer the evil. And I respect DJT and his entire family and every bit of that administration that is fighting toward helping be a soldier of God, extinguishing the evil that has perpetrated our society as of recent. I just want to be very clear about that. So we are being set up. These people are not stupid. They're criminals. They know exactly what they're doing. They've been manipulating elections for decades. They've been manipulating countries for decades. Elections are just one of their tools. But it's a very important tool because it gives them full access to everything. So if they can take over an election system of a country, they got it all. They don't have to fight so hard everywhere else because eventually they'll just keep changing everything and then they'll take it over right from underneath. Full infiltration by means of the election system. We don't know what the results are of our elections, the actual real results. The elections are designed in a way that we can't determine what those results are. They're inauditable elections is what we have now. You can audit all you want, but we will never know what the true results are because of the way our elections are set up, and I'm going to explain all that to you. Who do elections belong to? We the people. That's who elections belong to. Who's in control of our elections, though? Federal government, state government, certain individuals, and corporations. They control it all. We're along for the ride. We're in the passenger seat of our elections. Now, we use our elections to choose all those people that represented us. How good of an idea is it for the people that are chosen in the elections to be the ones that are running the elections? It's kind of stupid, kind of dangerous, right? This country belongs to us. The people in our government are our servants. They work for us. They represent us. They're here to serve us. How on earth did they get in charge of the elections? Exactly. We the people count. Yeah. So that's the problem. The wrong people are in charge of our elections, and they have taken it from us little by little by little, and most of us were totally asleep to it. I was. I had no idea. I did my stuff. I do computers, and I figured politicians do politics, and I figured, well, obviously the people that are voting for election systems are smart enough to make sure they don't do something stupid. But if you've ever listened to some politicians, it turns out a lot of them are not very smart. a lot of them are idiots, like really stupid, stupid people. And you wonder, how on earth are these people in charge of what's going on? No wonder we have a disaster. They're not magic. They're just people that got into these positions. And when we leave a vacuum, who's going to fill that vacuum? Someone's going to be put in there. So here's a little more advice to you. If you see a position open up to run for anything, you run for it. Take it. If there's a position for dog catcher, you better run for dog catcher. I'm not kidding. Fill those positions, because if we do not fill those positions, someone else will fill them for us. That's how they infiltrate. Run for everything. Then, of course, well, if the election system's corrupt, how do I win? Well, one way to guarantee not to win is not to run. There's no chance of you winning if you don't run. So at least get your foot in there, and then we'll fix the rest of it. This is going to take all of us pushing forward, and it's going to be wonderful when we finally get it done and clean it up and expose all these people. And our country, if you remember the happiness you had previous in your life, I think we're going to reach something even above that once we clean up all this evil. So the election illusion. I got a few new slides. I'm testing them out on you. Do you remember the saw the woman in half? Okay. So this is one of those examples, an earlier version. It's actually two women, not one, but they have this deep box, and you can't see what's in the slash, the little slashed area there. So that's the old school style. Now there's some newer versions of that as well. I'm gonna play a video so you can actually see. You didn't think you were gonna come to a magic show, did you? Oh, let me get some audio here. Oh, all right, hold on. I want to fix this audio. That's fine, that one's all right. Let's see here, I've got to change and repoint this over here. Okay, speakers. Let's try this.
All right, time for some New Year's Eve magic with iMagician Jamie Allen. Jamie, what are we going to be doing today?
Well, firstly, thanks for having me back. I've brought a classic of magic for today, a must-have for any holiday magic show, Soaring the Lady in Half.
Oh, can we do that to Val?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I don't think they can handle two of me.
I've got a better idea for today, because for years magicians have been soaring ladies in half using a wooden box. And everybody's always thinking, I bet there's something going on inside of there. So today we're going to change everything. We're going to soar the lady in half, but using a clear glass box. And take a look, Val, you can see all the way through it.
Yes, I can.
And we're going to have two of these, and we also, of course, need a lady, and we have Natalie just here, and she's going to be helping us out with this. And Natalie's going to recline on the table, and we're going to cover her up with these boxes. And I invite you both to step around the table so you can see this from all sides at all times. It's clearly transparent. We've got some catches here. I'm going to ask you to help us lock those down. You can see these little revolving catches on the front. You can do that. And have we got it all, Andrew? This is Andrew helping us out at the back here. Oh yeah, I can do that for you. If you look over here, Val, we've got a set of stocks.
Yeah.
And we're going to use these to actually trap her feet in place, and those are pretty solid. And also, around this side, Ryan, I've got one for you as well. We're going to try not to catch her neck just here. If you want to place this in, and that's going to lock her in place, just in case she gets any second thoughts at any point. And let's straighten this up so we can clearly see the situation. Andrew has a couple of blades. If you're going to cut a lady in half, you need something to do that with.
Naturally.
So, look, we've got
Don't
these
call me
steel
sexist.
blades, and these are
I couldn't
pretty
find one
solid.
sawing
Check
a
it out.
man in half, okay?
I'd say so.
I'm awake. Happy New Year.
Yeah, they're pretty sharp. And Val, you can see her midsection just here. We're going to rest that down on top. Now these are sharp, so be careful, but I'm going to ask you just in one, don't think about it now.
Don't think
one
about
go, just go straight down through the cabinet.
Here we go.
Is it okay? Yeah, Ryan, your turn. You can see what's left. Put it into the little grooves just here. You should be able to see how it will fit. And then just, it's stuck. Now just clean, what have you done? It's stuck. Hang on, try, oh, I know. Can you take her head, just gently here, and just, her head? Yeah, just here, just above her ears, and just slightly pull.
All right. Sorry.
We've got it. Take a look. We're going to release the catches, and I'd like you both to take a hold of one side of the table each. Val, if you could hold on to this end, and Ryan, if you could hold on to this end.
All right.
And on the count of three, we're going to separate the tables. Hopefully. 1, 2, 3. And that is sawing the lady in half. Clear glass boxes. Take a look.
How you feeling?
Fabulous.
Come all the way through. You can see there's no mirrors, there's no special effects. And Andrew, if you wouldn't mind, we're going to push the tables back together. If you both like to stand around the back of this so that you can see it clearly, we're going to lock this back into place. And of course, we move here the blades. You can see those really are solid. And Ryan, take a look. Let's take the stock out so we can start to release it. I want to pull this out. It sometimes jams a little bit, but it's good. And also one more on the feet. Val, if you want to do the honors for us, I'm going to release some of these catches so that we can release the boxes. Check her out. And take a look. That soaring lady in half. Coming down.
Happy New Year!
Jamie Allen, check him out.
Okay. Did she actually get sawed in half, cut in half? No, she did not. But it sure looks realistic, doesn't it? Okay. If you know how the trick works, then it's obvious. But if someone didn't know how the trick worked, it looks pretty realistic, doesn't it? Okay. That's how our elections are set up. It's actually pretty brilliant what they've done. They've designed a magic trick for us. And it looks really believable. And it looks believable to all the important people that it needs to look believable to. But the magician always knows how the trick is made, right? The magician knows the secrets. And that's what we've got. We've got an election ecosystem that was built by some election magicians. And they have slowly over time implemented this system. And it looks really believable to the citizens, but usually. When the results don't match what we expect them to be, it doesn't look so believable though. But they do their best to make it believable to as many people as possible. And especially our election officials, they probably hit them the hardest with the propaganda about how safe and secure the system is. Because the first people we're going to go to is our election officials when we don't believe the system works. And they're going to say, no, they're fine. Everything is fine. Because they don't know how the trick's pulled off. So I'm not going to tell you how that trick's done because I don't want to ruin it for you. But I am going to tell you how the election trick is done. So I'm probably going to ruin it for the people that have been manipulating our elections. Oh, darn. There's control mechanisms that they use. Bribery, blackmail, threats, political control, mainstream media, social media, technological control. They've got big tech. Public education is a big one as well. And selection placement. They actually select certain people and make sure they win the elections to put them into place to then serve as a blocking mechanism to keep those systems in place and continue to confuse and lie to the citizens. That's a lot of their mechanics. I'm going to focus on one today. I'm going to focus on the technological, so you understand how that works. The rest of it, I think you figure out how bribery and blackmail works. Blackmail, Epstein, Diddy, and the new one. Do you hear about the new one? Camille, with all the kids, the Harry Sisson and all that little group of young kids, all those influencers. Well, I don't know if you know, but this whole influencer network has been found now. We've got a list of most all of them and how much they've been paid by a lot of USAID money. And they've been influencing the public to sway people's opinions and to push disinformation. It's a network of people, hundreds and hundreds of them, with millions and millions of followers. It's all been created to take over our country, every bit of it. And it's been happening right underneath our noses. So this is a wonderful time to be alive. We are exposing all of this now. So let's talk about the election ecosystem. So this is the technological manipulation. Here are the secrets, how they do it now. So we have four main components of the system: a voter registration system, a voter validation system, tabulation, and reporting. When people scream, get the computers out, melt them into prison bars, they're talking about the tabulation. That's the third item. Think of it like a four-legged stool. And if any of those legs on a four-legged stool is broken, is the stool going to be stable? No. And if any of these four legs is manipulated, can we trust the results of our elections? No. So I want to let you know what these four legs are, because you guys have to understand what this environment looks like in order to fix it. You have to know. I don't want people talking circles around you. You have to know what's going on inside of the box. So the voter registration system controls the number of ballots in circulation. And what that means is the voter registration is, think of it as a database somewhere in the cloud, that what you think it contains is a list of registered voters, okay? Eligible voters. That's what any normal person, that's what any good person would think. However, that's not what it is. It's a database, and it has entries in the database. And those entries could certainly be eligible voters, but there could also be other entries in the database that are not eligible voters. There could be entries in the database that are duplicate. There could be entries in the database that are illegals. There could be entries in the database that are just made up, that don't belong to any real person that exists. It's just an entry in a database. I could type a few keystrokes and put whatever entry I want into a database. And if someone that has access to that database does that, well, a ballot is sent out, because in Colorado, we're all mail-in ballot state, right? That means every entry in that voter registration database gets a ballot mailed out to it. So if someone just injects 10,000 extra entries into that database, that's an extra 10,000 ballots that are out floating there. Or if they did 1 million, be 1 million ballots, and they can scatter them wherever they want. And then you ask, well, who has control of that database? Well, back in the day, our county officials controlled the local county voter registration cards. It was on paper cards in our local county building. Well, now it's a digital system, and it's not a digital system that's held in your county either. It's a digital system that is held by the state of Colorado. Jenna Griswold controls it. And they use a system called SCORE. And they let the county officials have access to it, but the county officials are not sole custodians of that information. The local officials, your clerk, does not have control over that database. She has access to the database, but not control over it. That's a big distinction. So if someone else puts entries in that database, your clerk wouldn't even know. And someone else could put them in there and hide them from your clerk, that even if she went and looked, wouldn't see them. She doesn't know this. She just has this thing she clicks on and logs into. She doesn't have control of it, and that's a problem. We have to put control back into the counties. The state should not be controlling this. The county should be controlling it. We have a decentralized form of government for a reason. It's supposed to be decentralized. You can't start centralizing the elections, because if you centralize the elections, the government will follow. And we don't want a centralized form of government. That is not what America is. We're decentralized for a reason. This government was decentralized to make sure the power was always in the hands of the people, at the fingertips, not some central control mechanism over here. So that's why the voter registration system is a problem, because we don't have control at the county level of the voter registration entries in that database. And even if it was at the county level, what happens if someone were to hack into it and your officials don't know that they're hacking into it? We have that problem too. If it was on paper sitting in your county building, could anyone from Iran manipulate it? Could anyone from Denver manipulate it if it's on paper in your county building? No. We have an attack surface this big for our elections. If we bring stuff back to paper, our attack surface becomes this big. If all you have to worry about is the paper in your county building, it's much easier to control that than some database that's somewhere that you have no idea who else has control of. If you ask your clerk where the data is actually physically stored, what computer and where is it that data is stored, your clerk will have no clue. And if your clerk asks, they'll either say, we don't know or we can't tell you, or they'll make something up and it won't be true. And let's just say they actually were honest and said, yeah, it's on a database in Delaware. Okay, how do they prove who has access to that database? They can't. It's not in the control of the county. So let's talk about voter validation. If you have all these ballots floating out everywhere, they tell us, well, don't worry, we validate them when they come back. And we only let eligible votes come back into the system. So by a show of hands, and don't be embarrassed, who has mailed their ballot in to vote before? Okay, about half. Don't do that ever again, and you're going to understand why. They want you to mail your ballot in, because when you mail a ballot in, it enters an environment that they control and you don't. The easiest way to manipulate an election, mail-in ballots and early voting. That gives them 80% of the control of the election right there. And I'll explain the mechanics of it. Why do you think they push so hard for mail-in voting? If you even say the word mail-in, they freak out. If you don't early vote, they freak out. They want everyone to vote early. Even the RNC wants you to vote early. They came out with this bank your vote scam. And I don't think it was necessarily done, everyone that pushed voting early, I don't think is a bad person. I think that they just don't understand the dangers. And they think it's a good idea because they're looking at it through a political goggles, not through cybersecurity goggles. That's the problem. They don't know what they don't know. And those of them that refuse to listen, those are suspect for me, I gotta say. If they're not even willing to have the conversation to listen to why early voting is dangerous, they refuse, I don't trust anything about that person. So let's go talk about mail-in ballots so you understand the mechanics of it. So in a mail-in ballot, ballots are sent out to everything in the voter registration database. If some of those addresses are wrong, where do the ballots go? The postal carrier has a ballot. They go out and try to deliver it. That address doesn't exist. It's in the middle of an intersection, let's say. What do they do with the ballot? Well, some of them, if they're not good people, will sell that ballot. And they'll make money by collecting undeliverable ballots. And there are people that will buy them from them. Because if they get their hands on one of those, all they have to do is fill it out, put a signature on it, and that signature sometimes has to match and sometimes it doesn't. And they put it back in the mail, and it goes into the election and gets counted. So people buy those that cannot be delivered. Now, sometimes they go back to the post office. And I've talked to postal workers across the country. Some of them said, yeah, we keep it in this one corner in our post office. This is where we keep them all. I said, do you track them individually? Oh, no. They don't track them individually. They just keep them in a pile. And then over time, as it gets closer to the election, the pile keeps increasing because there's a lot of undeliverable ballots. And then all of a sudden, it starts dropping down. They start disappearing. So someone's harvesting them from the post office as well. And that's worth a lot of money to someone. I mean, some of these people are paying $50, $100, $200 a ballot. You grab the stack of 100 ballots, that's a lot of money. Our system allows this to happen. You'd think they tracked every individual ballot. They don't. The post office does not. Now, what they'll do is they'll send the county a bill for processing all those undelivered ballots. But in many cases, we have got access to those receipts, those bills, and I'll give you an example. In one of them, the county was billed for, I think it was 12,000 undelivered ballots, and they paid the Postal Service, USPS, for 12,000 undelivered ballots. And then we asked, how did you get to the 12,000? Where's the list of them? They said, oh, we just weighed them on a scale and divided by how much one of those envelopes weighs to get an estimate of how many were there. There's a problem, right? You could tweak that a little bit and you could shave off quite a few of those. In addition to that, when the county receives those from the Postal Service, they actually do run them through a machine typically and find out exactly which records were undelivered. But when we asked that same county for their list of undelivered ballots, that county had 6,000 record of. So the Postal Service billed them for 12,000 undelivered ballots, but the county only received 6,000 from the Postal Service. Where'd the other 6,000 go? they got voted. That's a huge problem right there. You need to be looking for that. Undelivered ballots or undeliverable ballots are a very easy way to commit the fraud. And the mail-in system allows someone to just grab an undelivered, harvest it, fill it out, shove it back in. Now we're told, well, that ballot can't get back in because we do signature verification. Okay, so let's talk about that. When you send a ballot back in, on the outside of the envelope, obviously it's got a barcode and it's got an identifier because they have to know whose ballot is in there. Otherwise, how would they know what signature to check it against, right? So if it's Joe Smo's return mail ballot, there's a barcode on there that has Joe Smo's name on it. And then Joe, of course, is supposed to fill the ballot out, fold it, put it in the envelope, and then sign the outside of the envelope. That's the security mechanism we're told. So imagine you're at the county and you get one of those. How many of you processed mail-in ballots at your county? Raise your hand. Oh, great. Okay. Were you doing signature verification as well? No? Signature ver? You're doing signature? Okay. And you're doing sigver. Beautiful. Okay. So, and here's how this is supposed to work. They get the envelope. They typically will like scan it with a barcode scanner to pull the record up on screen of the reference signature for that person. Is that how you guys did it? Okay. And then did you actually look at the envelope itself or did you look at an image of the envelope? An image. So the envelopes get scanned by something, right? The mail sorter, probably an Agilis machine. Okay. So you're not even looking at the envelope. You're comparing a digital image on your screen, which may or may not match what's actually on an envelope. You don't know, right? Oh, we're getting there. Good, exactly. And then you're looking at another digital image that's on the screen. So you really don't know if either of these are actually legitimate. You're just having to blindly trust it. It's kind of scary. So then you're supposed to look to see if the signature looks legitimate. And if you're honest, then it's a lot better than if you're dishonest. Now, there are dishonest people out there that are doing it too. Now, sir, you said sometimes it misses the signature, so sometimes you don't even see a signature on there. Is that right? Do you see the line where they're supposed to put the signature and just no signature shows up? Blank. So they sign in the wrong spot and there's no signature. Now, you probably rejected those, right?
Yes, it goes to tier 2, they said.
Tier 2, right? The tier 2's out of your hands, right? Goes somewhere else.
Tier 2 also.
You're tier 2, okay. So did you end up seeing that again in tier 2?
Not that particular one, no. I sometimes would.
Maybe you would, okay. So I saw that when I was out there for Kerry Lake's lawsuit in Maricopa County, I got to see a lot of those signatures, the same thing, the scans of the envelopes. And there were a ton of them that were tabulated and approved, even though the signatures didn't match at all, were missing entirely, weren't even the right name. Or we saw this one that was like a double squiggly, and we saw multiples of them, all different voter names, but the double squiggly exact same signature across the board. It was a joke. And we're talking tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of those in just Maricopa County. So their goal is they just swing them through. Now, if you have honest signature verifiers, the blanks probably aren't going to get through as much. Now, how much training were you guys given? Were you given 15 minutes of training or an hour of training?
4 hours every election.
4 hours every election. Okay. You too? 4 hours? Okay. Now, at the end of your training, the test that's given after someone gets trained, you have to give them a test, right? Now, what do all of you think the minimum passing score on a test should be for signature verification before you're actually allowed to do it for real? What's a good minimum passing score? 19 out of 20. Is that what yours was? Okay. Okay. So 19 out of 20. Now, that's a 95%. Some people say 90%. A lot of people shout out 90. So let's assume it's 19 out of 20. If it was 19 out of 20, that would mean you'd make one mistake every 20. Now, there's more than 20 of you here. Would you be okay if 1/20th of you, because of the way the system's set up, automatically gets disenfranchised of your vote? Is anyone okay with that? Raise your hand if you're okay with you being the one of the 20. You're okay with it?
I'm okay with it, yes, because of the thing called Purine.
Okay. If it actually goes through curing. And it may go through here if you have a staff that's totally on top of things. But if it's somewhere else that doesn't have a staff that's totally on top of something, if bad actors have infiltrated that environment, then you have no control of it. And people in other counties do affect you. If you've got a corrupt county, let's say Boulder, if there are people in Boulder that are just allowing all kinds of extra ballots into the system because they're not checking the signatures properly or they're not curing them properly, those votes in Boulder end up overwhelming your votes here in Pueblo. That's a problem. We have to have a system that doesn't allow that type of behavior at all because bad actors could take advantage of it. And one reason I picked Boulder is this. A friend of mine's mom was a signature verifier in Boulder County. And she was proud signature verifier. She did the training and all that, and she was doing a good job. And she kept seeing a lot of signatures that were not right. They did not match. She started rejecting them. After her 6th rejection, she was fired. She was fired because she was rejecting too many signatures. And they replaced her with someone that didn't reject them. And she found other people were also fired for rejecting too many. And the claim was, you're rejecting too many. You're disenfranchising voters. If the signatures aren't right, you have to reject them. So that's one way that they could kind of get all the right people into place. They open it up to everyone, and then the honest citizens reject them. They start firing the honest ones and replace them with other people. It's a way to covertly replace your staff with the people you want. And that pattern I've seen across the country. Not every single county, but I have seen it in multiple counties. Now, I've asked about the test, and I have been told only in one county in the past 4 years has actually tested the people after they've gone through their training for signature verification. And did you say you were tested or not tested?
We were tested, but they didn't look at any results from testing.
Well, how do they know how good of a job you did? Exactly. So how serious do you think they are on the security of mail-in ballot signatures if they don't even bother testing someone to see if they can do it right? What if they get them all wrong all the time? That's a problem. If you were out there checking a plane before flight, and you saw a couple bolts missing, and you went up to your boss and said, I don't want to certify this thing for flight, and they said, well, just do it anyway. That's essentially what we have going on here. If the pilot of a plane went through training but never was tested to see if he could take off, fly, and land, would you want to be on that airplane? Don't you think your pilot should actually be tested? So this is a problem. It's a facade, it's smoke and mirrors, it's warm fuzzy. It's to convince people that there is security when actually there isn't any. Now, here's the big clincher for this. Let's just say let's say you were in court and someone's suing you because they claimed you signed a contract and you looked at that contract and it wasn't your signature. And you told the judge, this isn't my signature. Is the judge just going to find someone out in the hallway and ask them, hey, can you come in and tell me if this is the right signature? No, get your license out. No, they're going to require what's called a certified forensic document analyst to come and verify that signature in a court of law. And that certified forensic document analyst has to go through 2 years of schooling and training and testing. And they have to pass the test to be certified as a forensic document examiner. I know this because I've worked with quite a few forensic document examiners over the years. But for our ballots, they don't do that. They just pick random citizens with 4 hours of training. How is 4 hours of training equivalent to 2 years? It's not at all. Because they're not serious about it. That's the problem. It is just a facade of security. Now, we'll go deeper. Let's say you had a certified forensic document analyst show up, and they look at the signatures, and they don't just look at the image on the screen, they actually pull the envelope, and they compare it with this signature, and they say, yes, this is absolutely the same signature. Okay. Now, they open the envelope up and pull the ballot out. How does anyone know who filled the ballot out? There's no way to know who filled the ballot out. So what are we verifying a signature for? Did the light bulb turn on? Okay. It's BS. And I even asked Wayne Williams, who was our previous Secretary of State. I was 10 feet from him, and I asked him that very question. Wayne, regardless of signature verification, how do you know, if everything else checks out fine, and you pull that ballot out of the envelope, how do you know who filled the ballot out in the first place and that they were an eligible voter? And he looked at a room full of people, including a previous Secretary of State before him, and said, you don't know, in front of the whole room of people. It's a joke. That's why they want mail-in ballots. There's no way to know. If you don't know who filled the ballot out, how do you know that it was an eligible voter that filled it out? You don't. And if you don't know that it's an eligible voter, how on earth are we going to count it in our election? That's what we're doing across the country. Yes, sir.
So you say mail-in ballots, but Colorado has a mail-out ballot system. They mail out according to the voter registration database. You do not have to mail it in. Only some of
Okay, I'll call it a mail ballot. Okay? It's all the same. It's all the same kabuki theater. Regardless, they've got a signature on them. When we open them up, we still don't know who filled them out. There's no way to know who actually filled that ballot out, regardless of the information on the envelope. It doesn't matter. It could be mailed out, it could be picked up and then brought back later, it could be put in a drop box. There's just no way to know that an eligible voter actually filled that ballot out. I've even had some citizens that say, ooh, I'm guilty, I filled out my son's ballot for him. And it got counted. That's illegal. So if someone can fill out their own family member's ballot and put it into our system, then anyone could fill out a ballot and put it into our system. Our system has no way to protect against it. And if someone intercepted a bunch of ballots on the way back and they already had all the reference signatures, they could just make new envelopes and put whatever ballots they wanted inside of them, and they could throw the real ones out in the middle of the whole process. That'd be a very easy way to change the votes. Everyone mails their stuff in, they think it's great, signatures are checked. And even when they're curing, and so if anyone doesn't know what curing is, when a signature doesn't quite pass stage 1 and it goes to stage 2, someone ends up calling the voter. Did you mail a ballot in? And if the voter says, yes, I mailed the ballot in, they call that curing, okay, good, it's good to go. Some of them will make the voter come down and redo the signature sometimes. Did you guys make them do that, or did you just make the phone call?
if they were a voter that needed a voter ID. If they didn't have an ID and an envelope said voter ID,
Then you had them come down. Okay.
otherwise it was a simple question for,
Now let me ask you this. Did you ever show them the ballot when they came in and ask them, is this the ballot you filled out?
no, that never happens.
Exactly. So if I was a bad guy, all I would do is I'd get those mail ballots before they even get back to the county. I would replace them all. I'd scan them all in so I knew which ones they were. I would then create duplicate envelopes with all the same information on them and the reference signature, because I already have the reference signature, it's in SCORE, and your signature is already out everywhere on the dark web, just so you know. If you've signed anything electronic or anything that you've signed on paper has been scanned, your signature's out there. Everyone, the bad guys already have your signatures. So they could either get into the SCORE system that has all the signatures anyway, because that's the voter registration system, or they'll get the signatures, they create the envelopes, and they put whatever ballots they want inside them. Then when it goes through curing, you get called, and they say, did you vote by mail? And you say, yes, I did, but you don't know that they have a different ballot for you. There's nothing in our system that would stop that from happening. And we know that people have a motive to manipulate an election, right? Across the board, there's motives everywhere for people to manipulate it, especially nation-state actors that would want to manipulate this election in the United States of America. They could send in hundreds of thousands or millions of mail-in ballots on cargo ships and then distribute them around by truckload. We have allowed a system to be put in place that allows a type of manipulation that most people hadn't even thought of. Most of you probably didn't even think of this, because they do such a good job of convincing us that it's perfectly safe and secure in the gold standard. It's crazy. So the voter validation system is horribly broken. In fact, the entire mechanism of security for our mail-in ballots, the signature verification, is all kabuki, admitted by our previous Secretary of State. And somehow we're doing it all across the country. By the way, the China virus was to force mail-in ballots and drop boxes across the country and relax all the election laws in order to manipulate the 2020 election, because they knew how popular a particular candidate was, and they knew they could not stuff in enough votes otherwise, and they needed mail-in everywhere, and only a few states were stupid enough to have mass mail ballots. We're one of them here. And they needed a way to get them everywhere, but they've been trying to pass mail ballots in all these other states, but they keep blocking them. So they thought, well, how are we going to get them to let us do mail ballots? What if we lock them in their houses and scare them to death? They'll beg, especially with an election coming up, they'll beg for mail ballots so they can still vote. That's how we'll do it. And that's what happened. That's how we were all okay with mail ballots all of a sudden, because we're sitting there inside our houses. Those of us that stayed in our houses, I did not. When they told me to stay in your house, I left my house every single day. Even if I just drove around for no reason, that's exactly what I did. And when they told me to wear a diaper on my face, I did not wear the diaper on my face. And I will never wear a diaper on my face, and none of you ever put that diaper on your face again, if you wore one. All right, so the tabulation, let's get into that third leg. Now, my fear, I saw all this happening back in 2021 when I looked at this whole thing, because remember, I started in November of 2020 looking into this, deep into it. So in mid-2021, I saw the picture of how they've done all this and went, oh my gosh. And I saw people focusing only on the machines, just the machines, Dominion. It's not just the machines. It's the entire ecosystem. And I was worried that the whole country would focus only on the machines and they wouldn't fix the other three legs of the stool, and then we'd never fix the problem. So what I've been trying to do is help people understand the entire ecosystem of manipulation, all the components, to fix the whole thing. It has to be a holistic approach to fix it. We can't just treat one part. So we know what the tabulation is. It's black boxes. They're computers. They can count the votes any way they want. We can't see the source code. They won't let us. The testing they do on the source code they don't even go through logical source code, the logical instructions. They don't read what says on there. They just run it through automated procedures to check the source code. And I'm probably talking gobbledygook to you, so I'm going to translate it for normal people, not computer nerds like me. If you wrote a story about dogs in Microsoft Word, and I was going to check that story to make sure it was accurate, and if I just ran it through a spell checker and I didn't actually read it to see what you said about dogs, and if it passed the spell checker, I gave you a thumbs up that it's good, that's essentially what the source code for our voting systems is done. That's how it's done. The testing labs do not evaluate the content of the source code. They send it through basically a syntax checker, spelling checker, to make sure their common mistakes aren't in it. But they don't actually look to see what it does. Did you know that? Of course you didn't, because they don't tell us that. Do you think Jenna Griswold knows that? Probably not. Or maybe she does. If she's a crook, she knows, and I think she's a crook. But even if she wasn't a crook, she's not smart enough to understand that. That's correct. That's correct. She's dumber than a bag of bricks. But they chose her for a reason. They chose her because she wasn't smart and that they can control her. And you notice this. If you notice her getting asked a question, like blank stare, she can't even answer a question that isn't already prepared with an answer in front of her. I mean, it's just so pathetic. A lot of people ask me who they is. And I do have a list of a lot of the they, but we can go through that list and spend hours and hours and hours. Does that fix the problem? It doesn't stop the problem, right? I want to stop the bleeding. So we're going to focus on the mechanics we need to stop the bleeding. I don't care who shot the person in the library. I just want to stop someone from getting shot in the library again or anywhere else in the house. That's what I'm focused on. We'll figure out the who later. We're already starting to figure it out. Look at the investigations that are being done. Every day we find out more of the they and the structure of everything. So the tabulation machines are absolutely a problem. Hand count does solve that whole problem, like we used to do for hundreds of years. We used to count the dots on our piece of paper ourselves, and we added the dots up. Can everyone here count dots on paper? Okay, can everyone here add numbers up to get totals? Okay, there you go. We don't need millions of dollars of these machines that do it in the dark. Then let's get to the reporting. The reporting system controls the totals we see. Yes?
Can I tell you something about that?
Sure.
Tabulation?
Yeah.
We were election judges, right?
Mhm.
So one day in Pueblo County, I mean, these guys are doing a great job with signature and the hearing and everything. But one day, and I don't know what happened, the tabulators just broke down, right? They were closed for like a day.
That's odd.
Had a guy come in.
Oh, of course, they always have the guy come in.
With this little thing. He might have been fine. He might have been just a machine equipment check thing. He was in there for like a half a day.
That's a long time.
Did you see that?
Yeah, I was out, we got sent home.
Yeah.
I was in there.
But I think a Gillis machine is not a Dominion machine.
Yeah.
It's a Runbeck machine.
Yeah, it's really a mail sort, I think.
We can't evaluate the source code, so we don't know exactly what it does. But I know what they're using it for. Yes, those isolated experiences are not uncommon across the country. I hear it all the time.
Like looking, because they have glass windows in the tabulation machine.
Sure.
We're all looking at it. We all saw it happen, and we don't know because they closed the door. It's a locked office.
Yeah.
I was in there.
Were you? What happened?
The tabulation machine prints a code on the side of the ballot. And the printer inside the tabulation machine got off where that number that's printed on the edge of the ballot was off where it couldn't be scanned.
And how did it get off?
Nobody would tell me.
Did you see the ballots yourself?
They're like tape decks, 9-track tape decks. They're mechanical things. They can get off.
Mm-hmm.
It's not scary.
Well, they're a ribbon inside the machine. Is that right? Okay.
I saw that problem.
Yep. So they could also be programmed to change place as well. So when I went to another country to interview some people that worked at some of these electronic voting companies, they told me, people that worked there, just said, just so you know, here's what the name of the game is. We create a problem in the voting system. We trigger an issue. We essentially break it remotely or program it to break by itself. And when it breaks, we know that they're going to pick up the phone and call someone to come out as a technician. And that's how we have the excuse to go in to make the changes we need to make.
Could be a red herring.
It's exactly. And they said that's exactly what they do. They program the errors to occur. Now, I'm not saying that every error is that way, but that's what they told me. That's how they do it. So they always have plausible deniability. Oh, it broke. Send a technician out. And I keep hearing the same pattern as I travel the country, same thing over and over again. And I was told right by the guy that worked there, that's what we do. Yes?
Yes, sir. I worked in tabulation for several elections, and it was common for that to have to call somebody.
Common. So and I'm just going to repeat that because I want to make sure that this hears it for the recording later. So what she was saying in the back is that she's worked there for years in tabulation, and it's common that something goes wrong that you have to bring a technician in during the elections. Yes, and that happened in Mesa County too. In the middle of the election, 3 days into tabulating, they had a problem show up in their voting system. In fact, it was in the component of the voting system that it's called adjudication, when the computer technically can't read the dot properly on the ballot. It goes through this process called adjudication, where people pull up the images on the screen and they determine what the voter, they override essentially the voter intent on the ballot. And what they had happen in Mesa County is that they would do a ballot, and then they'd send it through, and then a little while later, that same ballot would show up again. It never left the system. It kept showing up over and over again, so they kept re-adjudicating the same ballots. And they couldn't figure out why that was happening, so they called Dominion. And Dominion said, we've never heard of that before, but we'll try to reproduce it in our lab, and we'll call you back. Well, hours go by, they haven't called them back, they're freaking out, and then all of a sudden, it just started working. So that happened in the election. They thought it was just an anomaly. Later on, when I'm talking to them, going over all this, I got some more details on it. And when we started looking at the data inside the system, at that same time that they were experiencing the problem with all the ballots stuck in adjudication, when we looked in the forensics of the system, we found the voting system had created an additional set of processing databases right at that same time. And there were about 5,000 votes missing from those processing databases, from the first set versus the second set. Like 2 sets of books almost. Right at the same time, they were having this loop of ballots stuck in the adjudication process. You would think in these systems that are used in all these elections for all these years, well over 10 years, Dominion almost 20 years, you think they would have the bugs worked out by now, wouldn't you? They should. By now, if they just count the dots on the paper, how on earth do we have all these bugs that happen every election? It's just kind of bizarre, almost unbelievable in a way. Yeah.
I do signature verification. You wait until they call you that they've got 800, 1,000, 1,200 ballots for you to verify, and then you work with a partner. There were at least 4 other groups. We're all working on the same batch. It was election week, and on that Monday, we started off, I remember it was like 1,200, and since the other groups are all working on the same, you can see the numbers come down, and it usually takes a couple hours to go through, let's say, 1,200. All of a sudden,
They went real fast, didn't they?
well, all of a sudden, our numbers doubled.
Oh, they went the other way. Doubled and tripled. Like someone injected a bunch of extra ballots in, didn't they?
Or like the Agilis machine processed more ballots and they got added to the stack.
Or it claimed to, and you don't actually know that it did.
Yes, it happened once on the Monday
Mhm.
and twice on election day, Tuesday.
Yeah.
And we go, what is this? Our warehouse manager, she didn't know, she's calling around.
Did they ever get to the bottom of it?
No, they just kept telling us, refresh.
Inconclusive. See, the system is set up in a way, even if everything was done properly and there was no shenanigans, we don't have any way to know that. It's always an I don't know. It's such a disaster. Everything is so far out of our control as citizens, and nothing in our election should be out of our control. Everything should be in our control. We should see everything and verify everything. We cannot risk a single mistake in our elections. How on earth are we operating a system that all these other people control? It's almost like they don't want us to be a part of it anymore. And if you have all these different components and all this complexity, all those areas are areas that someone could manipulate the system without you ever knowing. So it's possible that they could have just electronically injected all those ballots into the system. It may have never come from the Agilis, went straight into the system, and that may be an electronic manipulation of your election. You may not know. So the way to diagnose that is we go look at we do a forensic investigation on the Agilis machine, and we check it to see if it processed those same ballots that then showed up in your system. And then we have to make sure that paper actually exists. But then we still, at the end of the day, have no idea who filled the ballots out. That's the beauty of this system. If you're a bad guy, there's no way for the citizens to actually verify the election. Yes?
A couple of weeks later, I'm on a Zoom call with various people. Ron Hanks is there, and Ron Hanks starts talking about front loading, and then it clicked. They were front loading, and during the 3 episodes that I witnessed, there was a minimum of probably 8,000
Extra. Yeah. It's not uncommon. I hear it all the time. And in fact, when I investigated, we did the forensic investigation of the Mesa County database, when you look in the database to see the votes, here's how it works. You take a stack of ballots, you put them in the tabulators. The tabulators scan them, and they put them in a processing database. Then from the processing database, it actually keeps track of every single choice on every ballot in there. And then from there, it just adds it to the totals database. That's how it works. It's like a multitude of databases. It's kind of weird. I would never set it up like that, because if you set it up like that, someone could just swap one for the other and you wouldn't know. It should all be contained so you have security around the whole thing. They don't. It's like modular, so you can swap them out. And that's where that extra set of processing databases showed up. When we looked at those votes in the processing databases to see when they actually showed up, well, every time the scanner scans one and puts it in the database, there's a date and time stamp on it every time it comes through. When we looked in there, there were 1,000 ballots in there in the very beginning, before any other ballots. It's a block of 1,000 ballots. And that block of 1,000 ballots showed up in the database in less, I think it was just a few seconds over a minute. Okay, 1,000 ballots in a few seconds over a minute. If you look at the scanning speed of the scanners could not even physically scan the ballots fast enough for that to actually occur. That's how we caught them. And the other very interesting thing about that 1,000 that is in the database, when you look at the votes, it's exactly a 50-50 split. But we just looked at like the Trump-Biden, 50-50 split. But when you look at all the other ballots that came in after that, they were very heavy Trump, because it's a very Republican area. Mesa County is Republican, 70+%. But there was a preload of 1,000 votes in that database that did not correspond to a piece of paper. Could not have happened. Yes, sir.
I looked at the forensic report, number 3, that you weren't necessarily in favor of, but was, and they referred to that log file. And that log file and the 4 seconds per batch, or whatever it was, and it couldn't possibly be processed. It looked to me like the images were already scanned in, and they had 10 ports into the database, and so 10 things could happen at once. And he was confused. His report in port 3 claimed it was all about, but I believe it was only the start and the end of the batch that was in the log file, not individual.
Unfortunately, that's not the case. In the database itself, everything else after that first 1,000, everything was spaced properly. But that first 1,000, one, all happened in just about a minute, which physically could not have happened in that time period organically. And second, it was all a 50-50 ratio. So the ratio of the Trump to Biden that we looked at in that first 1,000 was vastly different from all the others. So it was not close to the rest of, this was 50-50, the rest were like up here. So there's no way, that's a preload. And we've seen that in other counties as well across the country.
Was this
Yeah.
happened after the 3 days?
No, this was the very first thing that showed up in the database.
Referring to
Just press that mic button once.
Thank you. I'm referring to the point in the log file. It was 3 days later.
That was when the extra set of processing databases was created.
Yeah, the new
and there was
database,
about
yeah.
5,000 discrepancy between the two of them. Yeah, and so that wasn't necessarily a timing thing. It was just an anomaly between, first, you shouldn't have extra sets of these processing databases. That's very strange for them to be created 3 days in the middle of tabulation. Something happened. Now, how I look at this is either something went horribly wrong in the voting system at that 3-day mark that caused it. Maybe it was a bug in the voting system. We know there's bugs in it because they come out with bugs all the time. Or maybe it was something malicious. I don't care at this point if it was intentional or if it was just an accidental bug. All I know is we can't trust the results that come out of the system with that kind of thing that had happened. At that point, if I saw that, I would have said, all right, stop. We got to recount all those papers. We got to recount by hand at this point. We cannot trust this system. Something went wacky in the system. We cannot trust it. And they should have just grabbed all those ballots and hand counted all of them at that point.
The alternative,
but they didn't do it.
The alternative would have been to say, we've got a glitch. We have to start the whole process over and run those whatever it was, 50 batches.
They could have at least done that, but
That's right.
they didn't do that
That's
either.
right, they didn't do that either.
Yeah. So I don't trust the results that came out of there. So we should just, really, all those results should have been thrown out, and they should have just redone all those ballots just to make sure. But they didn't. And instead of even questioning that stuff, what they did is they started attacking Tina Peters. Instead of saying, okay, we obviously have a weird glitch. We had never seen anything like this. Dominion, what happened? And while you're figuring out what happened to give us an idea, because this could have happened in other counties too. Typically, if you have a software system and that same software is used in multiple places and you have a glitch that happens in one county, that glitch could happen everywhere. So you really need to examine it. You know, there was another glitch that happened that they came out and admitted to, I think in 22, a Dominion glitch. And they said it was isolated to only that county, but they also admitted they never looked anywhere else. This is the problem we have. It's just a disaster of a system. All right, so let's get to the reporting. At the end of the day, let's say the tabulators worked great. Let's say there was no manipulation in the voter rolls and the signature verification was done by certified forensic document analysts, and the voters even came in and said, that's my signature, and they looked at every ballot and they said, yes, that's my ballot. Those are exactly the choices I filled out. That's the only way we would know it's right. Let's just say all that happened. Then our election officials print the reports out from the voting system, or they download them to a flash drive. And then they think they're sending those totals for their county to the Secretary of State. I've sat with election officials that thought that's what they were doing. And I said, show me the link that they gave you. And they showed me the link. It's not even going to the Secretary of State. In a lot of cases, they're sending the data out to this company called Scytl or Clarity. Scytl is the Barcelona headquarters name. Scytl, S-C-Y-T-L, look it up. And Clarity Elections is just the U.S. subsidiary of Scytl Corporation, which is out in Barcelona, Spain, not even an American company. And Colorado is one of those states that did that. So Colorado contracted with a company based in Barcelona, Spain, for all the county clerks to send their data to so they could add up the totals. And then they created this pretty little web page that looks just like the Secretary of State site. They even embed it in the website, but it's not the website, but it's coming from a different place. If you look at the source code of where the page is, you can see referencing to Scytl. But it looks like it's part of the Secretary of State site, so no one knew the difference. Why on earth would we have all of our county clerks send all the totals to some other company out of the country to add them all up for us and then just blindly believe they're adding them up right?
They want to cheat.
They want to cheat, exactly. Can we all add our county results ourselves? Why on earth are we paying some other company to do it? Don't you think Jenna Griswold could count or could add those up? Oh, bad example. Okay, if she was not a dunce, do you think she could use a calculator and add numbers up? Jenna should be adding up all the county totals herself under camera with witnesses.
Was that the name of that
So-
lady he sawed in half?
It might have been. So even if the three first legs are good, if the reporting leg goes out of our control, they can manipulate the results of the reporting. And if that's happening in a lot of states or all the states, we have a problem. Well, if you look around, that's what's been happening. It's not in every single state, but a lot of the states are using these other organizations, not just Scytl. A lot of them are using Scytl and Clarity, but some of them are using these other companies. It's ridiculous. So Arizona, I was there in Maricopa County a couple of years ago, and I asked the citizens, have you guys added up your county results yourself? And they said, yes, we started doing that. And I said, did it match what you were told by your Secretary of State? No, it did not match. So here's what I'd recommend you do. Don't trust what the Secretary of State tells you the results are for Colorado. You add up your results here and you go to every other county, go to their website, call them up, find citizens that live there and confirm it, and everyone needs to be adding these up themselves. Take the reporting out of the picture. You add them up yourself. We don't need some other company to add them up for us.
She was in charge of her own election.
Katie Hobbs?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. What's wrong with that? Katie Hobbs is, I think she's definitely slightly smarter than Jenna Griswold. But they're both very stupid. And they're both liars. Katie Hobbs especially is a liar. All right, so speaking of adding things up, let's go over some math. This is math time. I know you got the magic show. Now you're going to get a math lesson. All right, I don't think you're going to need a calculator for this, but it is a little bit of election math. I'll go slow. Virtual voter registrations plus virtual votes equals what? Virtual results. Our virtual voter registrations are because we don't have control over these voter registration databases. That makes them virtual. They're not physical paper, they're virtual. Virtual votes are the ballots that come in by the mail in or mail out that we have no idea who actually filled the ballot out. And we have no way to know it. That's a virtual vote. And when you have both of those together, you end up getting virtual results. That's the problem. Everything is virtual. And the world lives in virtual reality anyway, so I guess virtual votes isn't a big deal for a lot of people. So there's a psychological contrast we have. We have the citizens, you and I, that think elections are a tool to measure our will, to choose who we want to represent us and what laws we want to follow. That's what we look at elections for. Now, the other group are criminals, and we just have to say what it is, and we have to acknowledge it finally. It's not just confused people. They are criminals at the top of this that have done this to us. This is not accidental. It's on purpose. They look at elections very differently. Elections are a tool of theirs to obtain and maintain power, launder money, and choose the laws that they want us to follow, but they don't follow. They love elections because when they have control of the elections, the criminals can do whatever they want. And that's what we have. We have a bunch of criminals controlling this state right now. And we're not the only state that has criminals controlling it. There are other states. We're probably among the top, probably 5 worst. But we're not the worst. And actually, they're not criminals, they're communists. I've kind of figured this out by watching what they're doing. If you look at the pattern, they are communists. This is the communist take over this country. They're using our elections to destroy our country. Corrupt elections are the communist sleight of hand. That's what we're up against. We are fighting communists. They just look different. They're cloaked communists. Yes?
And they're in all parties.
And they're in all parties, absolutely,
Yes.
100%. Yep.
Yes, it
They
took
are.
me a while to learn that when I got into running and being elected. The reason I ran was because I watched that go on here locally within the different groups. It wasn't something like I Googled it and then I concluded.
No, you saw it firsthand.
I saw it firsthand,
Yeah.
and I see it all
They've
the
infiltrated.
time.
It's not to say everyone in each party is
Yeah.
communist, but there
Correct.
are communists in both parties.
Yes, they're infiltrating.
They're infiltrators.
Everywhere.
And they
Everywhere.
play like they're not. They play like they're
Oh.
your friend and they're conservatives. And I'm sure there are people in the Democrat Party that are play really nice Democrats. And it's okay, I used to be one of those. But there are communists that have infiltrated both and they put a cloak on. They're not who
Yes.
they say they are.
Exactly.
Yep.
And until people, and it's the people that have to understand that,
Identify them, root them out.
and they have to understand that it is truly, good versus evil.
It is spiritual battle here. Yeah.
It is a huge spiritual battle. And until you're willing to accept that and stop thinking of calling it conspiracy or far right or all the...
It's far more sophisticated than that.
It is.
Yes.
It's far more sophisticated than that. And to get the average person to even understand that
It's
is-
hard. It's overwhelming.
It's
so you have
overwhelming.
to find a way. It's almost an art form. You have to find a way to walk people through it. And it's scary. It's really scary. And because it's so scary, a lot of people have a mental block. They can't see it. Their brain won't let them
won't
understand it
allow-
because it's
yeah.
too frightening for them. So, the people that are sitting there screaming at us that think I'm a Nazi or that are burning Teslas, they are annoying to me, but I know they're doing it because they have believed the lie. They have been brainwashed. They have allowed the evil to take them over, and they're not seeing things clearly. I feel bad for them. I want to save them. I want to fight for them. I'm fighting for them. They want to kill me, and I'm trying to fight to free them from this evil. I'm okay with that. So what you have to do is have some compassion, have some faith, and just know that these people are captured by demonic forces, and they're captured by lies, and we have to have our hearts and our minds open to them and find a way to get through to them. This is the time of awakening for a lot of people. We are starting to see, we're learning how to see the evil. And some people are slower learners, and some people have thicker goggles on than some of us do. So help them see through that as best you can. Don't try to, lose your mind on someone that's got a really thick pair of goggles on. Maybe find someone with a little bit thinner pair and work on them first. And eventually we will help everyone get out of this. Yeah, it is. That's I can do it with a smile. There have been many attempts on my life. None of them have been successful because that man is not ready yet for me to be done with this fight. And I have zero fear, and I do not care. And I'm proud to fight for what's right. I am. Even though it's every day is a pain in my butt, I still do it with a smile. And people are like, how can you keep going? How do you keep doing this? I mean, I was shot at last week. 2 shots. And I was smiling and laughing about it afterward because it's just part of the journey. Part of the journey. I'm enjoying every bit of it. And I know I've got a really good shield around me, and I have a feeling the people that were trying to take me out, there was a high-speed chase involved as well, and they ended up losing control and spinning out in the middle of it. I bet they were trying to figure out, why can't we get this guy? What force field did we hit? So thank you. I appreciate that. It was good. All right, so this brings us to this point. Survey. Did you fill out Pam's survey yet? If you have not filled it out, now it's time for potty break and fill that survey out, and then we will reconvene here in 8 minutes for the rest. And I got all the good stuff's coming, but I want to give everyone a chance to just walk around, exercise, and if anyone needs to hit the bathroom, hit it, and get that thing filled out for Pam because it's really important. We're going to build an army here, and that's all part of doing that. Okay. Yeah. Yes, it is. There is a way out of it. I'm gonna give you the whole solution here in a little bit of exactly what we need to do to reclaim our elections. And then we're gonna have a wonderful, amazing country very soon. Yes, sir.
Here in Pueblo County, we had 3 elections. We sent out 100.
There we go. Cool. Okay, so in an honest election, here's how an honest election works. The normal stuff. This is what we think it does. Citizens cast their votes, we collect the ballots, tabulate them, and we get the results. Did you all follow that? Count the dots on the piece of paper and add them up. And whoever has the most dots wins. Shocking how simple this really is. Okay, so let's go into first order election manipulation. I'm going to go through 3 orders for you. Here's the first order, and this has happened since the beginning of elections. Before you cast the votes, you lie about the opponent. If someone lies, then it's going to sway the vote, right? That's the first order election fraud right there, when just lies. And does that still happen today? Of course, right? That's never going to go away. People lie, sadly. I, at one point, thought politicians didn't lie. I was very naive. Now I just don't know if they tell the truth. But some good ones are showing up. All right, so let's move to second order manipulation. It's a little bit more complicated, but actually really pretty simple. So between collecting the ballots and tabulating the ballots, what if we did something else on the side? What if on the side we took over the ballots over here and we counted them, we pre-counted them to see what the votes were? And let's say Bob and Mary were running against each other, and let's say we're bad actors and we wanted Mary to win. We want to put Mary in. So if we pre-count those ballots and we realize that Mary's down by 50 votes, what could we do to fix that so Mary's not down by 50 votes? Well, one thing we could do is we could fill in undervotes. If anyone doesn't know what an undervote is, let me tell you what it is. If there's a race and Bob and Mary are in the race and you don't know who either of them are, or you don't like either of them and you don't vote for either of them, you leave them both blank, that's an undervote. If someone got their hands on your ballot, they could just fill in a vote for Bob or Mary for free, very easily, if that was done before it went through the tabulators or went through a hand count even. That's an undervote. Never leave an undervote on a ballot, because anyone with sleight of hand could fill it in. Do you know that League of Women Voters were caught doing that many, many years ago? They had pieces of lead underneath their fingernails that they had glued in. And as they were counting, they were filling in undervotes. They got caught doing that. League of Women Voters, I'd say, is probably one of the oldest voter fraud organizations that I have read about. And of course, they call it the League of Women Voters because who's going to criticize it? They're sexist if they criticize it. What a perfect cover name. And so I read about this. They were involved decades ago in election fraud. And the funny thing is, in these trials that I've been a part of, in these court cases I've gone to, these hearings, do you know who shows up at most all of these? A representative from the League of Women Voters. They seem to always be there. They always seem to send an attorney there. It's the most bizarre thing ever. But I think we know what they truly are. So if you couldn't fill in any undervotes, what could you do to get Mary to win? Well, you could throw some of Bob's ballots out, right? Or you could inject more Mary ballots in, right? Or you could swap some Bobs and some Marys. If you did all that funny business on the side with the ballots and then brought them over and tabulated them, you could manipulate the whole election, couldn't you? You still have the same number of voters. As long as if you add 5, you got to take 5 out from the other side, right? If you fill in undervotes, it's not going to change the number. So if you swap ballots, you still have the same numbers. So when you look at all these audits they're having us do all across, do you know a lot of the audits are just counting the number of ballots? And if we count there's 5 voters, we have to count 5 ballots. That's the sleight of hand, but nothing in that tells us that 4 of those ballots weren't swapped out. So that's second order manipulation. That's happened for decades and decades and decades also. That's why after elections, they find ballots floating in rivers and lakes. That's throwing some of the ballots out. We've seen that. We've seen those news articles. The shredding companies getting really busy after elections. We've all heard of that. Okay, so second order gets a little bit more supercharged, we'll say, when you have control of the media. Because let me ask you this. If everyone hated Mary Mary was disliked in the whole county, and Mary won. Do you think the citizens would buy that? So what if they wanted Mary to win, but they had control of the media? What if we used the media to convince everyone that Mary was actually a lot more popular than she is? To convince people that it was like a neck-and-neck race between Bob and Mary. Let's change Mary's name. Let's call Mary Kamala. Do you remember when Kamala wasn't popular at all, the least most popular candidate? And then 2 weeks later, suddenly neck and neck? That was a media-conditioned illusion. That's why they pushed all those concerts out. They couldn't just tell you that it was neck and neck. They had all these concerts to make you think, oh, well, I guess if with all those concerts, maybe she did gain popularity in 2 weeks. Yes, that's correct. It was a media-conditioned system, and they did that to prepare the people. They've been doing that in our elections forever. If you start looking back at the headlines, you'll realize what they do is they do a hit piece on the candidate they want to lose, and then they puff up the candidate they want to win. And then they start telling you it's really close. And the reason they say it's really close and neck is they like 50-50 elections. Because if they can establish a 50-50 with the use of the mail-in ballots and the machines and the combination of everything, if it's a 50-50, they just have to nudge it one way or another in order to manipulate it. So if they can control it nearly 50-50 all the way through, at the last minute, they just nudge it up or nudge it down. That's really easy for them to do. And if it's close, 50-50, it's a nail biter, then even if someone doesn't like the result of it, they think it was so close they almost won. I mean, if they just had Biden get 100% of the votes and Trump got 0, would we really believe that? No. I mean, it was still pretty bad, but it wasn't that. So 50-50 makes it really easy. So the preloads, when we saw the 1,000 votes preloaded, what that does is that establishes that 50-50 right at the beginning. Then as the votes start coming in, all they do is they watch them come in and they just pump them up or pump them down one way or another to keep it around 50-50. That's the easiest way to manipulate the election to where you retain the illusion for the public and make it really simple to manipulate. So that's why you see a lot of elections that are rigged, you'll see a lot of them are about 50-50. Very close. You see that pattern. Now, I don't think they're going to keep doing that because now we're on to them. So they're going to keep changing their behaviors. That's okay. We'll keep figuring it out. So let's go to third order manipulation. This is what we're kind of living through now. Second order was probably, 8 to 20 years ago. Now we're in the third order. Third order is use the mainstream media, FBI, DHS, CIA, and CISA as propaganda tools. Then they build this wedge between election officials and the citizens by convincing the election officials that they're under attack by the citizens. Because if the election officials feel threatened by the citizens, they're going to stop listening to the citizens because they feel threatened by them. So then when you do figure something out that's wrong and you come to your election officials, they're scared of you. They don't like you. They hate you because they've heard all this horrible stuff. And I'm sure they're told by Jenna Griswold that all the citizens in Colorado are out to kill all the clerks. I'm sure that email came by. So they build this artificial wedge between the citizens and the election officials. They do it on purpose. They do it to maintain control. And then, of course, they play the savior. They say, Jenna says, well, we'll take care of you. You're part of the County Clerks Association, and you're under our umbrella, and we're going to send the FBI out to take care of all those nasty citizens who dare to question anything. And so what they end up doing is they end up capturing our local clerks and putting them under their umbrella and scaring them from ever talking to the rest of the citizens that they represent. They've done this all across the country. I watched Jenna Griswold do this at the NAS conference in front of the FBI that was on a Zoom call. That idiot stood up, not the FBI agent, Jenna, stood up and said, I'm getting all these death threats. What is the FBI going to do to give me more security? And the FBI agent said something like, well, if you have anything credible, let us know. I think they're making it up. Personally, I think they made it up because I don't know a single citizen in all of the citizens I've come in front of across the country in 4 years. I've never talked to a single one that ever even mentioned the slightest bit of any type of desire to harm an election official. Not one. And I've met some crazies. I've met some really passionate people out there. They have never spoken about hurting an election official. You'd think I would have come across one of these people. Now, here's the funny thing. Where's the proof of all these death threats? Jenna, where's the proof? Show us. If there's all these death threats that you have to have millions of dollars of extra security for you, little Jenna Griswold, show us the proof of the threats. Show us the people. Good luck. Another deer caught in headlights. Have another candy bar, Jenna. So then what they do is they've got this logic and accuracy test they come up with. They create this LAT, it's called a LAT, to give election officials a false sense of security that the systems are perfectly working. And here's what they do. First of all, they call it a logic and accuracy test. Why do you think they use the word accuracy in it? As a psychological trick, right? They put accuracy in it so people think it's accurate. So here's what they do. Usually the vendor designs the logic and accuracy test. They design the test to test their own system. And they have to follow that exact steps, all those steps, to test the system. And if they go through this grueling stuff and they get the right answer at the end, then they get the false sense of security that it works properly. All the LAT does, and basically, here's what it does. You take a stack of ballots. They already know what the results of the ballots are. They take the stack, they put it through the tabulators. The computer tabulates them and spits out what the totals are. And then they compare it with what the totals should be. And if they match, they say the system works right. That's essentially what the LAT is. But all that does is that proves that it can work right for that stack of ballots in that one instance during the test. Does that prove that the system will always work right under different circumstances, in different times, different elections? They don't even test the same election. They make an election to test. I mean, and sometimes they use the same one, but typically they don't. So a lot of people say, well, how on earth, they wouldn't do that. They couldn't program the system to pass the LAT, but then manipulate the election. That's so far-fetched, that would never happen. Who remembers Dieselgate? Volkswagen Dieselgate. So if you don't know what Volkswagen Dieselgate is, here's what it is. Volkswagen came out with this diesel engine, and it was better than every other diesel engine out there. It got tremendously low emissions, really, really good conservative emissions, and it had really good gas mileage and really good power. It was like the best diesel that had ever been made. No one could figure out how they did it. How did you make this thing have so little emissions? They sold millions of these cars. And all of a sudden, some nosy college kids, brilliant nosy college kids, got one of these cars, and they were doing some project with them, some diesel project, and they were sniffing the emissions from the tailpipe with an electronic, sniffer, computer system. They weren't there with their nose. They hooked up a sniffer to it, and they drove it on the road. And it got really bad emissions. And they couldn't figure out why it was getting emissions that were so bad. So they thought, well, something's wrong with this car. Let's take it and get it emissions tested. So they took it to the emissions testing place, and they tested it, and it got great emissions, very low. Take it on the road, really high. What's the difference? Well, here's what happened. After a lot of investigation, turns out they didn't have the only car that did that. All of them did it. Here's what it was. The programmers, 2 programmers at Volkswagen that wrote the software that goes into the engine's computer. Yeah. They wrote the software to detect that the car was being driven during an emissions test. And when it was during an emissions test, it ran a different program that got really low emissions. And when it was out on the road, it ran the program that gave you really good power at the sake of emissions. They sold millions of these. That is a real-world experience. That happened. In fact, Volkswagen had to buy all those cars back. Do you know that I think in Colorado Springs, there's a whole field full of them, in fact, right? That happened. That's real. Now, do you think there was a motive for Volkswagen to fake their system to operate in that way to sell a bunch of cars? Yeah, they made a lot of money, right? Do you think there might be a motive for someone to manipulate an election? What about control the President of the United States and everyone in Congress? Everyone down to your dog catcher. Yes, turns out. There's much more motive to manipulate elections than there are to manipulate the emissions on a car. Yet they were able to pull it off for years and years and years, sold millions and millions of cars. This is ElectionGate. Here we are. They did it. Okay. So the logic and accuracy test is a con to give your election officials a false sense of security that the system will always work perfectly. That's all it is. So that's why they truly think in their heart that it's fine. They just don't know what they don't know. That's the problem. And it's really hard for me to sit down with an election official because they don't want to hear it, because they think I'm an election denier, right? They think I'm suffering election denialism. So some of them will sit down with me. So luckily, over the country, I have sat down with many of them, and many of them have told me, I know there's a problem, but I don't want to get Tina Petered, so I'm not going to say anything. I can't come forward. They turned Tina Peter into a verb, and that's why they did it. They even said in this sentencing, when Barrett sentenced her, he actually said, I'm doing this as a deterrent for every other election official out there. You should listen to the sentencing, 19 minutes of absolute demonic evil. And trust me, as bad as you think it is, until you listen to it, you won't realize how bad it really is. The whole thing will click when you hear it. And what I'll do, I'm going to put that sentencing up on the Hand Count Roadshow website. And I'll put it right on this event page. So if you go to that website, you go down to this event for Pueblo, I'll make sure that video is there so you can watch that 19 minutes of sentencing. It's really important to see the true evil that we are up against. So then they conduct the manipulated election. They raise the margin of error. They don't care if there's mistakes in the election. They love mistakes in the election. They even do things in the procedure to induce mistakes in the election, because if you induce a lot of mistakes in the election, it makes it harder for us to see the manipulation. If you create a cloud of mistakes, no one knows what's going on. Pretty soon you just throw your hands up. Who of you have tried to audit an election before? Raise your hand. Is it easy?
It was when we did it in 2014.
2014, yes. Try to do it today. It's
We had another set of scanners from a company called
Clear Ballot.
Clear Ballot.
Yeah.
They came in and they took all of the John Morris ballots and ran them through and it matched.
Yep. So Clear Ballots come out, and they're another company that, so the peasants don't have to count the ballots themselves. Clear Ballot will do it for them. I don't trust any electronic system. And here's why. Even if it worked fine once, it doesn't mean it's always going to work fine. Does anyone know what con and con artist means? What does con stand for? Confidence. That's what con artists do. They build your confidence, and then they take advantage of you. When the con artist, when they borrow money from you and they pay you back in full plus a little bit of interest that first time, and then the second time maybe, and then the third time they borrow that bigger amount, but they did so good at paying back the first two, you loan them that third amount, and then you never get paid back, you got conned because they built your confidence those first two times. Our election systems are very similar. We can't keep falling for the con. Then they designed this risk-limiting audit. Have you heard of the RLA? They tout the RLA. We have the RLA. Our systems are perfect because we have the RLA. And our election officials like saying the fancy term RLA because they learned something new. But they got fed kabuki again. Because here's what the RLA is. We're only going to test a small number of ballots. And if those are right, we're going to assume that the rest of them are also right. So let me give you an equivalent. Let's say you were the manager at a grocery store and you had 10 cash registers and you were in charge of those cashiers. And the boss came up and said, So are the totals in the cash registers right? And you said, yes. And he said, well, how do you get them checked? You're so efficient getting them checked so quickly. How are you doing this? Say, well, I've got this thing. It's called a risk limiting audit that I do. It's really great. What I do at the end of every day is I just check 2 of the registers, and I pick them at random. And if those are right, I assume the rest of them are right also. Do you think you'd have that job for long? I'll give you another example, and this one just happened to me 2 weeks ago. So I do network cabling also, because I'm in IT. And I didn't want to do the cabling. I hired a company to come in and do the cabling. They came in to do the cabling, and they didn't have a tester that would test it up to the speeds that we put the cabling in. It was 10 gigabit instead of 1 gigabit. But I had a tester that would do 10 gigabit. So I said, I'd bring my tester. You'll use my tester. And he said, well, I'll do it. Just give me your tester. I'll test all the cabling that we put in. And I didn't feel real comfortable with that because I've been screwed enough times that I only believe and trust myself. Plus, I'm paying the bill. I want to know it's right. So I bring my tester, and I'm with the owner of the company, the owner of the cabling company, and we're testing, and he's plugging the cable into my tester to test it. And he says, hey, I'll tell you a trick. I used to do a lot of government jobs. All you have to do is you just test one cable, and when that's good, pull the cable out, the tester advances, and just put the same cable back in again, and just keep testing the same cable over and over again. The tester won't know the difference. This guy is a guy I hired to consider as a subcontractor for doing cabling jobs for me. He told me he cheats in the testing and told me how he does it. Is that insane? Let's just say we're still talking about the invoice there. Yeah, I mean, some people think it's okay to do this. Yeah. It's crazy, but yeah, the people that know how to manipulate a complex system, all those, and he was bragging they were government contracts that our tax dollars are paying for. And then here's what happens. You go to use the outlet, and all of a sudden you find out it doesn't work. Then who gets called? They call the cabler back out. And he says, well, something must have happened because the test report was 100% for all of them. So then he makes more money by fixing the outlet. So in the outlets I tested, he did 20 runs. 7 of them, he didn't even put connectors on the end, so I couldn't even test them. And 2 of the others that I did test failed because they wired them backwards. And had I not tested them, he would have given me a clean bill of health because he would have just tested one cable over and over again. Unless you control it, you don't know that that's happening. And like I needed to test those cables myself, so I knew, you have to count your ballots yourself, so you know. Do not trust anyone. We cannot do that in this landscape. Just cannot. We cannot take the chance. So the risk limiting audit is not an actual risk limiting audit. Does it limit the risk if you only check a few of the cash registers? No, it enhances the risk. It's a risk enhancing audit. You create more risk if you don't check all of it. It's a risk enhancing audit that is identifying as a risk limiting audit. And those are what we call today trans audits. That's a joke. You're supposed to laugh. I made a trans joke. Come on, okay. There we go. Now you got it. Okay. They're rainbow-colored trans audits. Nothing against that. All right, anyway, not there's anything wrong. So they condition the gullible to trust the risk-limiting audits. This fancy RLA term, it's all BS, again. They explain any mistakes you do find. They explain it as isolated human error. And they designed the manipulation to always look like human error so they can try to explain it away as that. It's the pattern I see all over the country. If it just happened in one place and that's all I saw, I might believe that. But when you see the same error happen everywhere, I start to not believe it. Then they claim that mistakes that you do find are underneath the margin of loss. Well, it was a mistake, yes, but it wasn't enough to affect the election. Or not enough to affect the presidential election. We hear that stuff all the time. It's the same excuse over and over again. It's a broken record in my head. Then they tell us beforehand, expect delays in the results. Did you hear that? Yeah, of course, you heard that in the 24 election. Just so you know, I made these slides 3 years ago. This slide was 3 years old. Because I knew what they were doing. I see the pattern over and over again. Why'd they tell you to expect delays? Because they need time to stuff in the extra ballots to manipulate the results. That's why it took a month after the election to actually find out what the results were. Right? How do they tabulate millions of ballots in one day, and then it takes 4 weeks to tabulate a few thousand? Come on. They're stuffing them in, moving things around until they finally able to make it work out, make all the math work out. It's brilliant. And of course, they rush to certify the election. As soon as they give you the results, if you audit and you think that things aren't right, doesn't matter. Jenna says you must certify. And if there's a problem, we'll examine it later. That equivalent is just like that airplane deal. You look at the airplane beforehand, the bolts are missing. You say, the bolts are missing. We shouldn't put this up in the air. These people could die. And the boss says, nah, it's fine. Certify it for flight. If it crashes, then we'll look into it. That's what's happening with our elections. Just certify it. Doesn't matter if the bolts are missing. If something's wrong, we'll check it out later. Do you know that in Hawaii, they got so bold, they put the governor in office before they even certified the election? They certified it after they put the governor in place. That's how confident they are. Elections are just a show. They're a show right now. So they threaten anyone that threatens certification, right? Because it's now illegal to threaten certification. To threaten to withhold, it's illegal, and they'll put you in jail. Jenna put that into, I don't know if it was law, but he made an order for it. The Secretary of State of Michigan also said the same thing, Jocelyn Benson. She even said, we'll come for you. If you think you're not going to certify it, we'll come for you. On video. She's crazy. They attack anyone that questions the results of the election. They assign this new illness called election denialism. And then they tell us, little peasants, there is no widespread election fraud. But it doesn't start there. What does it start with? There is no election fraud. Then there's no widespread election fraud. And then when we find widespread election fraud, what does it turn to? There is no widespread election fraud enough to change the results of the election. Do you notice how the target just keeps moving every time we find stuff out? It's like talking to a 2-year-old. Nothing against 2-year-olds. So here's how they do it. Step 1 in this third order election manipulation, they've got to create headroom. What is headroom? Headroom is this. The real votes are here. The registered voters are up here. The gap between the real votes and the registered voters is called headroom. So if they're going to stuff extra ballots in to affect the election, these votes here, they can only stuff this many in, okay? If you have 1,500 people registered to vote and you have 1,000 people that have voted, how much headroom do you have left to manipulate the election? You got 500 left. If you put all 500 in there, what kind of voter participation do you have? 100%. That's kind of shocking, isn't it? Would we really believe 100% voter participation? Is that realistic? No. Especially when most voter participation is like 60 to 70, if that, on an important election. Would you believe over 100%? They don't want to get over 100 because then the peasants start figuring things out. Well, we have elections all over this country that have over 100% voter participation. How do you have more votes than you have voters? So in their engineering of the election manipulation, they try to not have close to 100% voter participation because some of the smarter peasants figure things out. They do think we are stupid. But we haven't been looking long enough, so we didn't realize it. We weren't looking at the data. Now we're looking. So let's just say that they need to have more headroom than that because 500 might not be enough to flip an election. So what they want to do is they want to increase the amount of headroom as much as possible. How do they do that? They either discourage people from voting so they have less real voters in the system, Or they increase the number of registered voters. How are they going to do that? Well, they're going to have massive voter registration drives. They might even give prizes out to secretaries of state just to get people registered to vote. They might even give bonuses based on how many additional registered voters they get in the system. They don't care if they're voters or real people or not. They just want entries in the voter registration database. They'll open it up to NGOs and let NGOs go knocking door to door. Some of them might even give NGOs direct access to their API so they can put the registrations in directly and bypass the county, like in Maricopa County. They make it really easy to get those voter registrations in the system. They even might have your DMV be able to register voters now, so you can skip the county altogether. And it's not necessarily because people are going to the DMV to register to vote, but if the DMV allows voter registrations and then there's those extra entries in the database, they could just claim, oh, it's not us, it's the DMV screwed up. They created a loophole by allowing the DMV voter registrations. Now, if you had, let's say there were 2,000 people that lived in a county, could you have, or would you believe there's 2,500 registered voters in a county that only has 2,000 citizens? Nope. Us peasants would figure that one out too. That's over 100% voter registration. That can't be. They don't want that either. So what do they have to do if they want to push up the registration past the population? They've got to increase the population. So what do? Do you remember about 14 years ago, there was that question that was taken off the census, that big fight? What was that question? Are you a legal U.S. citizen? And I couldn't figure out why on earth would they want illegals to fill out our census. Our census is to determine how many American citizens are there. And some people might say, well, because illegals should be able to fill that out. Do you think there's really a line of illegals saying, hey, we want to fill the census out? Why can't we fill the census out? We're going to sue until we can. No, there's no line of illegals wanting to fill the census out. I guarantee that. But when you take the question off, what do? You now create an unverifiable census. You've now created an ability for someone else to pad the census. And how are you ever going to verify and audit it? You look on the census, you're going to see Juan Valdez. If Juan Valdez wasn't illegal, how are you going to find the illegal? You can't. So you can't even audit the census now anymore because they've created another loophole there. So here's the name of the game. You create a loophole in the census, inflate the population, that creates headroom so you can inflate the voter registration. Then you create massive headroom, and then you have a way to dump the votes in the system. And do you know how hard it is to remove an entry that you find in the voter rolls that shouldn't be there? I bet you could get your dog registered to vote in probably a few days. I bet it would be very easy to register your dog. I'm not telling you to register your dog. I'm just saying I bet you could. And then, can you imagine you register your dog and you go into the county and say, hey, I'd like to remove this voter registration. That's a dog. And they say, well, we can't remove it because we have to wait for them not to vote for two election cycles. We're like, but it's a dog. You could probably bring Fido with you and say, this is Fido. Fido can't vote. And they'd probably still say, I know, but we have to make sure that Fido doesn't vote in 2 election cycles because the state law doesn't allow us to. That's the brain damage you end up getting when you have these conversations. Have any of you dealt with that yet? Yeah. This is what we're dealing with all over the country. It's the same playbook. They inhibit the pruning of the ineligible records too, because the goal is have as many in there as possible, to have as much headroom as possible to stuff the votes in. So here's what they then do with all that headroom that they've created. And they do it over years, subtly. Here's the feedback loop. And what is a feedback loop? Well, you measure something, you assess, you adjust, and act. And then you remeasure, you assess, adjust, and act. It's a great big loop. Okay, how does it apply to our elections? Well, I'm going to show you. First of all, we start with the media psychological conditioning. If you're going to manipulate an election, you have to make it believable, because if the citizens don't buy it, then we're going to end up in a situation. You'll end up with a whole bunch of people suffering election denialism. We don't want that. So it's got to be believable. So first, use the media to condition them to expect the results. Then do this. Let the citizens cast their votes. But we don't need, remember before we actually let them cast their votes and we collected the ballots and we counted them off on the side? That's a little harder to do on a distributed basis throughout the whole country. So I'm going to show you the new way they do it, which is brilliant. Because they can do it from a large scale from outside the county. Your county officials don't even know this is happening. And here's how they do it. So if I know your voter profile, if I know your party affiliation, for instance, are you a Democrat or Republican, first of all? Republican? Okay. So you're Republican, and this works for Democrats or Republicans. If I know you're a Republican, and if I look at your ballot, I probably know what your ballot's going to look like. Everything's so divisive these days, I could get probably 95 to 98% accurate on a guess. And if you were a Democrat, I could probably do the same thing. I knew how a Democrat's going to vote. If you're an independent, you'd think, well, you wouldn't know. Well, actually, do you know that everything you do is spied on? Everything you say, your iPhone is listening to you. Apple actually just finally admitted that again. If you say the word lawnmower, all of a sudden you're on Facebook and you see ads for lawnmowers a few minutes later. We've all experienced that. They know every tweet you've sent, every text message, every email. They're mining all that information. It's going to these great big databases. And you have agreed to all this, by the way, because in that terms of service that you accepted, do you remember accepting that? Yeah, of course. How many of you read it? Not a single one of you, because none of us have ever read any of those, because they're like 40 pages long. We just click yes every time. And what that did is that gave them permission to spy on everything you do. Now, they don't even wait for that. They still spy. And they lie. And then when they get caught, they say, oops, it was a bug. They've done that multiple times too. So all these companies spy on you. Everything you buy on Amazon, do you know everything you buy? They track. Everything you buy at Best Buy, everything you purchase on your credit card. All these credit card companies are sharing all your purchases. They know everything. So they have all that data there to market. That's one. They sell the data to these companies to be able to micro-market to you. It's a service. Do you know the political agencies also, parties can buy this information. So there's a profile on every single one of you about how you vote and every way you feel about every issue. It's already known. So picture this. If I know you voted and I have your profile, I can build a model of the election results off on the side. I can put in what I think your ballot's going to be for all those choices. I don't even have to look at your ballot. I just need to know you voted. And I could build a model of the election results on the side. So if I just knew who voted in the election, I could build a very accurate model of what the results are, and I'd be pretty close. Okay, how do I know you voted, though? Well, if you mail your ballot in, here's how I know. Because we got conned again. We paid for this thing called Ballot Tracks that tracks our mail-in ballots. And we're told we made this for you peasants. So you can feel comfortable mailing your ballot in. You can just log in and you can see where your ballot is. Oh, we have a little, I don't know what happened here. There we go. Sometimes there's glitches. So Ballot Tracks is not for you to see where your ballot is. And by the way, there's not a GPS attached to your ballot. You're just looking at a video game. You're looking at whatever they want you to see on the screen of your phone or your computer. And it's not for you anyway. Do you know how people I've talked to that have said the information they saw on Ballot Tracks wasn't accurate? Many. And you're not the only state that has Ballot Tracks. There's other states that have the same type of systems, whether it's Ballot Tracks or Civics. And I don't even want to get into Civics when you realize what Civics actually is, a different company that makes another tracking software. It's not for us to track our ballots. It's for them to know that we voted. It's for them to track us, but we paid for it. We got conned again, like I said. So some of you say, well, I go in and vote in person, so no one would ever know that. Okay, what'd you go in and check in on? Oh, one of those electronic poll books that are online? That they know immediately when you check in to vote and where you checked in to vote? That one? So it doesn't matter how you vote, they track that you voted. As long as they've tracked you voted, they can build a model of the election results on the side. And if they know what the results are and they know what they want the results to be, it's a simple subtraction. They know exactly what they have to stuff in. And if they know what they have to stuff in, they need headroom to stuff it in. That's why they make the headroom. And by the time it gets there, we have no idea who actually filled it out because it comes in by mail or Dropbox. So if we have no way, regardless of the signature, to know who actually filled the ballots out, or if they were swapped even along the way, we don't know, they've got the perfect storm right there. Perfect control. Now, how would they do this in one day, though? That'd be a lot of work to do in one day across the whole country. So what they realized is we need more time. We can't do this in one day. Let's come up with this thing called early voting. And we'll tell the peasants it's for their convenience. And everyone loves convenience these days. So we'll convince them of that. And that's how they sold it to us with early voting. But there was a problem with early voting. How many of you, by a show of hands, are procrastinators? About 20% were honest, and the rest of you are liars. And they know that too. And so here's what happened. Even with early voting, people still waited to the last minute to vote. And that doesn't help them out much if we have this whole early voting period and they have to wait to the last minute. So they had to find a way to convince the peasants to vote early. So they came up with bank your vote. That's why this huge push to vote as early as possible. That's why this scare of, oh my gosh, we could have a snowstorm on election day. Oh my gosh, something could go wrong at the voting center. Look what they did in Maricopa County. They do that to scare and condition the people to vote as early as possible. And they don't want you voting a day or two before. They want you voting on the first day of early voting. They want you out there right away. And the reason they want you out there right away is that gives them weeks to do all the manipulations. And that way they can hide it. They can spread it out so no one sees a big spike somewhere. It's for them to be able to manipulate your elections. Now, if you vote on election day, which you all need to, in person on election day, that breaks all their system, most of it. What do they hate the most? They hate election day in-person voters because they don't get their information ahead of time. If you're playing poker with someone and they can see your hand as soon as it's dealt, are you going to do very good? You're probably not going to win that round, right? That's what voting early does. It shows your hand ahead of time. Don't make it easy for them. Show up on election day in person. Now, they still have to manipulate election day, right? How do they do that? Well, somehow they got to stuff more ballots in, but how are they going to get ballots stuffed in that night if the polls are closed? Well, they'll convince us that the mail is really slow, and we have to make sure every vote counts. So we have to allow mail-in ballots to keep showing up for a week or two after. That's the scam. And then, by the end, they collect the ballots, tabulate them, and get the results. It's a perfect setup. And they have convinced us it's convenient. But it's actually really convenient for them. Now, the beauty of doing it that way is our election clerks have no clue this is going on. They don't know who filled the ballots out. They just know that by law, they have to follow the law. And if the signature looks like that, they have to tabulate it. They don't have any choice. It's totally out of their control. That's the problem. The fact that it is out of their control is a problem. The fact that it's totally out of our control is a problem. But that's how they're doing it. So your election clerks can do everything right in your county. This manipulation, this third order manipulation, can happen totally outside. And these other organizations that do it all and gather all the data and stuff everything in, they can do it all. It doesn't need to happen in the computers. That's not to say they're not doing it inside the computers. We know there's funny business in Mesa. We see it. I can see it in the data. So it's a toolbox. They have a bunch of different ways they can manipulate elections. They really like this third order one because they can do it outside the counties and they can really puppeteer the whole country very easily that way. And they can control all the county elections down to dog catcher. because they can remote control your county elections with stuffed mail-in ballots. And then if they still isn't right, what do? They just stop in the middle of the night in the counting. They have this little override. They just stop the count. They change the results to what they want, tell us those are the results, and then they stop us from looking at any ballots, and they do all the stuffing they can until they backfill enough to make it believable. By the time the peasants do get their hands on the ballots. That's the game. And I feel so stupid allowing this. I didn't know. I had no idea. But now, I hope it's all clear to you, now that you see all the components of it. It should be crystal clear. It's actually pretty simple. It's brilliant, though, isn't it? Yeah. So they publish target results. They shuffle voter registrations, that's why voter registrations keep changing. All throughout the election, they keep changing. We're seeing the data, seen in many counties all over the country. The counties don't even know it's happening. It's happening outside of them. It's so sad. Kills me. All right. Then you add the media psychological conditioning at the end of the election to seal it up for the people that don't believe it. They tell us the results are going to be delayed. There's going to be mistakes. They even tell us there's going to be mistakes. And then when we find mistakes, we're not surprised. They are conditioning us. They withhold and destroy data that we need to audit. They have the RLA. They claim it minimizes the error detection, right? They condition the gullible to trust it. They explain mistakes as isolated human error. They ensure mistakes are within the margin of loss. They rush and threaten to force certification. They activate the MSM, MFEI, DHS, CIA, and CISA propaganda machines. And I think those agencies, I think there are good people in them, and I think we're going to get them cleaned up, but obviously they've been used against us. They mock and attack the election deniers, and they make up election denialism. And now they're using AI. And with the advent of AI, which we all know AI is coming, it's here, we are never going to see the manipulation again. So that's why we have to reclaim our elections right now. We have no chance. This is a major, major problem. So I made up a list of all the tactics I've seen they do over the years. And so I made it, it's 4.5 point font. I hope is it big enough to read? Okay. Well, that's only page 1. There's page 2. And I'm working on page 3 right now. And if you want to see this list of all their tactics that I've collected over the years of what they do in all these counties, let me know, and I'll share the list with you, and you can share it with whoever you like. It's important that we know knowledge is power. We got to know it, and if you know it, then you'll at least recognize it. And now with all this knowledge you have, you're going to go back. When you go home after this, you're going to think back at all the stuff you saw happen over the past months and years, and you're going to go, oh my gosh, now I get it. And then now going forward, you're easily going to see it. And then when you hear the BS coming from people's mouths like Jenna, you're going to be able to call her out immediately, be like, that's a freaking lie. I know exactly why she said that. So Colorado rough election timeline. Okay, we got about 15 minutes left. Wayne Williams in 93 to 97 was in the Colorado House of Reps. In 2008 was our mail-in ballot transition. That's when we started getting mail-in ballots. Think about when Colorado started changing also. 2013, we went to all mail ballots, whereas every entry in that voter registration database, a ballot's going to get sent out to them. In 2015, before 2015, we used a multitude of different electronic voting systems throughout the state. Wayne Williams was elected as the Secretary of State in 15, and he signed a contract with Dominion to bring Dominion in to almost all the counties. I think all but one was Dominion. In 2016, they came out with the automatic voter registration, which allowed the DMV now to register voters. Then 2017, they came up with that risk-limiting audit BS. In 2018, we tried to get voter ID passed, and they rejected it. They didn't think it was a good idea to check people's ID when they went in to vote. Now, that doesn't help with mail ballots, but at least it helps with in-person. In 2019, around that, Wayne Williams was working for Runbeck Election Services. That's who makes the Agilis machine and mails out a lot of ballots and handles that type of process. They do all types of election systems. In 2020, the whole, what went down. Tina thing happened in 2021, and then Wayne Williams was hired to take Tina's place illegally as the designated election official And the county paid Wayne Williams Law Firm $32,000 for Wayne to spend, I think, 4 or 5 weeks in Mesa County. Boy, I'd like to make $32,000 in a month. That'd be great. I think I'm losing about that much every month now. And then in 2022, they started relaxing the voting rights again, and 2023, more adjustments. So all they're doing is they're moving the citizens further and further away from the elections, and they're covering their tracks and making it easier and easier for them to manipulate and harder for us to see it. So here's Pueblo election news. I wanted to give you some Pueblo stuff. 2018, this just stood out. 2018, your DA, which is not your DA anymore, but your previous DA, was it Choster? Is that how you pronounce it? Choster? Okay. So he came out and found record number of voter registrations. Does that sound familiar? Record voter registrations. In fact, so much, it prompted him to increase vigilance. And you know, he only scrutinized 1,100 of the 200,000 ballots. Only looked at 1,100 of them, which is kind of scary. And one of them, one case, resulted in charges and a conviction. Well, that's a great setup to say, oh, it was almost nothing. But you only looked at 1,100 out of 200,000. Which 1,100 did you look at? Did you look at the 1,100 that weren't fraudulent? And are the fraudulent ones in the other part? Why didn't you examine all of them? Then in 2020, another investigation. And he found one case, again, just one case of actual fraud. One person voted for another without authorization. Now, I'm not going to put any of you on the spot, but I'll bet there might be someone in this room, maybe, that voted for a family member. Hopefully there isn't, but I have given presentations and some people have said, yes, I did. I didn't think it was a problem, but we got away with it. That's the way they would have voted, I swear. That's a problem. If we can cheat in the system, then don't you think other people that are bad actors are going to cheat? Of course. Of course they will. Then 22, massive signature discrepancies. Why do you think we're having all those signature discrepancies? They identified Bo, and Bo's gone too, identified 725 ballots with discrepant signatures. And that number went up. A week later, it was 850 now. And he only looked at half of them. And it was an unusually high cure rate, even by his words. Unusually high cure rate. Why would that happen?
Because Woolworth had a recall, was getting recounted, and they wanted those ballots in.
They wanted to get him in no matter what. Yep. In 22, there was a ballot design issue. I see this happen all over the country also. A ballot design issue caused the wrong ballots to be sent to voters. Jenna Griswold sent like 30,000 to illegals by accident, right? And then it happened here. And it happens in all these counties seem to have these ballot printing issues. In 2020, Tarrant County, Texas, the world's leading election director, Hyder Garcia, that was brought in from the Philippines to run Tarrant County elections. He worked at Smartmatic Voting Systems for 13 years and was under investigation for election fraud in the Philippines. Somehow he ends up in the United States, a year in California, then went to Tarrant County. In his election, they made a mistake in the printing and 20,000 ballots wouldn't scan. So he had to recreate 20,000 ballots himself with a group of people. And then, wouldn't you believe it, right after that, the county turned blue for the first time since 1964. What a coinkydink. And then he got a job when he quit, because when he got caught, he quit. Went to the Federal Election Assistance Commission. He works for the EAC now, all of our nation's elections. He's under investigation for election fraud in the Philippines. And then Dallas County hired him back to be the elections director in Dallas County for the 24 election. And there's massive problems in their election. And they're trying to figure out why. Might want to look at Hyder Garcia. And then in 23, Pueblo County had a design issue in the envelope. A hole conveniently placed in a way where you could see the mayoral candidate. Convenient, right? What a coinkydink again. So here's the common patterns. Just in those 4 that happened in Pueblo, I wanted to give you an idea of where else they're happening. Record voter registrations, Pueblo County, Colorado. Orange County, California, Clark County, Nevada, Maricopa, Arizona, Harris County, Texas, Fulton, Georgia. Are these familiar counties? Kind of in the news a lot, aren't they? Isn't that weird? Miami-Dade, that should be a big one for you. Broward, that's a big one. Scrutiny of returned ballots and signatures. You guys had that problem. Well, Pueblo County, Boulder County, Larimer, Denver, Adams, all Colorado. Orange County, California, LA, San Diego, Maricopa County again, Fulton County. Boy, that's a convenient surprise, right? Clark County, Nevada again, Harris County, Texas, Wake, North Carolina. That one I hadn't heard before. Summit County, Ohio, I had heard was a problem. Wayne County, Michigan, huge fraud. Milwaukee, Wisconsin, big fraud. Chester, Pennsylvania, big fraud. Miami-Dade again, Florida. Are you seeing the pattern? People voting for someone else, instances of that. That's indicative that the system's broken and allows that. It shouldn't allow it. Pueblo County, Colorado, El Paso County, Maricopa, Arizona, Fulton, Georgia, Wayne, Michigan, Kings, New York, is it Alachua, Florida, Oklahoma, Tarrant County, Texas again, Williamson County, Texas. They got some problems down in Williamson for sure. Grand, Colorado, Douglas County, Colorado, Union, North Carolina, Greene, and Cook. Ballot or envelope design issues. Pueblo County, Adams County, Harris, Milwaukee, Gwinnett, Palm Beach, Florida, Broward, Escambia, Florida, Hamilton, Illinois, Miami-Dade again, Cook again, East St. Louis, Duval, Maricopa, Arizona, shocking, right? Orange County, Forsyth, Cuyahoga. Cuyahoga had tons of fraud many years ago. Right. Philadelphia, Wayne, Michigan again. The patterns, this is the stuff I'm seeing as I travel across the country. Now, people in these counties think it just happened to only their county. They don't realize it's the same freaking patterns. Kills me. Colorado rough election, we hit that. Okay, we got a few minutes left. I'm not going to go into the emails that I sent to Wayne Williams. But Wayne Williams, who told a room full of people that Tina Peters is a criminal and was wrong, I asked Wayne, what did you think of the Mesa County reports, Wayne? He said he had never read them. He was the previous Secretary of State. He was the one that brought Dominion into this state in the first place. And he's condemning Tina Peters and never bothered to read any of the reports. Does that sound like someone that's actually interested in the truth? No. And he's also the one that said you have no idea who filled the ballot out on the mail ballot. And I asked him, would you like to see the back doors in the software? He said, yeah, no, everyone said they exist, but no one showed me. I said, I'll show you right here. And Wayne sat down in front of my computer, a bunch of people around us, and he watched the back doors. He watched the vote flipping going on in the system. I showed him everything for 45 minutes, and he said, oh my gosh, I had no idea. I said, would you like to know more? He said, yes, email me. Let's get a meeting together. So I emailed him. Oh, and he got back to me and never. And then I emailed him again, and he got back to me never. It's funny. So here's electronic voting technology. That's just a picture from the Dominion manual. That's just the tabulator. Are you following? Looks really simple, right? Okay, a lot of people say blockchain's the solution. I'm just going to put this one to bed here. Blockchain. Let's talk blockchain. Everyone's heard of blockchain, right? Some people have. Some people have heard of blockchain, and they're like, oh, blockchain is great. Sounds good. Sounds neat. Block and chains. Okay, yes. So I'm going to show you some blockchain code. This is from Bitcoin. I just grabbed some of the code. Here's some of the code from Bitcoin. So let's go over some of this, because I explained the election ecosystem to you, so I have to explain blockchain to you also. So this first procedure at the top called buried development, it identifies that it's an integer, a 16-bit integer, and it's going to hold, there's 5 different values that can be held by this. There's going to be a deployment, height, inc, CLTV, DIRSIG, CSV, and a SegWit. So those 5 variables are going to hold a 16-bit integer each. Then the next procedure here is valid deployment, and it's going to return a Boolean value. That means a yes or no value, and you're going to pass it this thing called a buried deployment. Are you following? No? Okay. Okay, one person is, that's good. So let me put this one to bed. If the citizens can't understand how the thing works that runs their elections, can we use it? No. Big fat X. Do not fall for the blockchain. That's not going to solve all our problems. It's just going to further obfuscate something. So now only a few of the computer people are going to understand it. Now just the programmers will understand it. No. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to a common sense solution. We're going to return elections to the people. We're going to dilute our threats out to the precincts. We're going to have 100% transparent elections, 100% verifiable by every single American citizen that casts a ballot. Anyone that wants to verify it can verify it. Real simple. Voter registration, we should do every 2 years in person. The sole custody of those voter registration paper cards should be the county officials. It should sit in a box just like we used to by precinct at the county building. We should still have a digital version of that. And I have designed a system I'll put out in the public for free. I don't care. I don't want to make any money off of it, but it's a really simple system. It just takes paper cards, it scans them digitally, and puts them out there so everyone can share the data that's on the card so they can verify it. Fully open, verifiable, transparent, but the paper is the key. The paper is what's used in the elections. So even if someone did hack that system, like people say, any system can be hacked, absolutely. But even if they did hack that, it wouldn't matter because the paper cards go out to the precincts. That's how you fix the problem. You bring it back to paper. So just like we have paper ballots, we know why paper ballots are good. Everyone admits paper ballots are better than electronic ballots. The same thing can be said about paper voter registration cards. The same concept secures our voter registrations. We do the citizenship and residency check right there in one place, like having one TSA in one spot so it's all done consistently right there. And if you have 2 years to register to vote, I think you can manage to get down to your county building in a 2-year period. If you can't get down there in 2 years, maybe you don't live in that county. There should be a multiple registration check to make sure no one's registered more than one place at a time. A witnessed signature. Can you imagine our election officials there in the county building are notaries and they notarize our voter registrations right there? That's what should be happening. We notarize other important documents. Our most valuable asset as an American citizen is our ballot. There is nothing more valuable than your voice, your vote on that piece of paper. And your registration must be held to that same standard. We store them by precinct, and we publish the read-only list. Poll books, real simple. Paper poll books when you go in and vote at the precinct. If you vote at the precinct, you don't have to worry about trying to get down to your voting center because it's probably in your backyard. It's probably walking distance a couple blocks away. Do you know we're actually disenfranchising voters with all this centralized voting centers? Because they're having to try to travel somewhere, and that's what's channelized them into use mail-in ballots. If you had to only go 2 blocks from your house to vote, you wouldn't be mailing your ballot in anymore. If it was convenient, they're making it inconvenient to vote in person. They're making it inconvenient to vote securely.
That's the way we used to do it.
Exactly. And it worked for hundreds of years. Somehow we did it for hundreds of years. And if you have an election holiday, then all of a sudden all those schools are available now. The reason why they've created this early voting thing also is to make it so we have to have designated voting-only centers because then it doesn't let us use the schools anymore if you have 2 weeks of voting because the school can't close down. But if you have a holiday, all of a sudden the schools are open to be used for elections again. It opens the doors for that. And they have all the ADA compliance, and they have the lighting, and they have this big gymnasiums and all the space we need. It's all there. It worked for hundreds of years. They're trying to push us away from that subtly and covertly. The solutions all available at our fingertips. So we only do mail-in voting if it is absolutely needed. You have to validate that you need it. We don't just blindly send them out to everything in the database. Not going to do that anymore. Election day, 1-day holiday. We have 1,500 or less in the precinct. Why 1,500? Because in 1,500 votes, if you have a mediumly complex ballot, you can do it in 4 hours by hand. I've done hand counts. I've done many hand counts as I traveled around. Real hand counts for real elections. Searcy County, Arkansas, we did full hand count for the primary and the general election in that county. And we did it no problem with camera and scanners. So at the end of the election, all that information goes up on the county website, and anyone can download the ballots. They could download the tally sheets. They can see the whole thing. You can check your whole election. Can you imagine an election where you just put everything out so no one had to do any public information requests? Like all the tally sheets, the ballots, the whole thing is already out there. So if you question it, okay, just go download it, count it yourself. We can do that. We have the technology. We're just not doing it. Technology is great if it's used for the right thing. The problem is we use technology for the wrong thing. We applied it wrong for our elections. Instead of using technology to obfuscate it and move the citizens away from it, we should have used technology to make it more transparent. We just, wrong application. I'm not anti-tech. I'm just anti-bad application of tech. Let's apply it the right way. On election night, you count the ballots where they're cast on video, and you scan every ballot, and you give everything to the citizens. Why don't you count it the next day? Because what happens overnight? Who's going to watch that box overnight? Why don't you move that box to another building before you count it? What happens along the way? Oh, it's in someone's trunk. Okay, who was in the back seat and swapped it out? Who already had the ballot box, an extra one under the blanket in the back seat or the trunk, and did the little magic show of I'll put the box here, and then magically when I go take it out, when I get to my other location, I take out the other box. They look identical because I know what box is going to look like. I even know what seal number is going to be on it, so I can make sure I have the identical seal number. Tell me those things can't be forged, give me a break. If there's a way to manipulate an election, I guarantee someone has thought of how to do it. Why do we give them a system that we can manipulate? Why don't we just count the ballots right where they're cast? The polls close, we don't move the box anywhere, we immediately count those ballots. What could happen? If we're counting them right there, we take all that off the table. No brainer. We know results that night, like we used to on election night, and then have to wait a month. And we put the results out right there at the precinct. Everyone that's there signs. They certify that the results are right. We know everyone that was there. They probably your neighbors because they live in your precinct. It's probably one of you. And you're going to take a copy of that. You're going to make multiple copies of it. Everyone that worked the election at that precinct is going to get their own copy of the results that they get to take home. They're going to put it on the outside of the building so the public can see it. And they're going to transmit the results to the county. And the county's going to put it up on their website. Anyone that doubts it and says, well, how do I know the website's right? Well, you're going to take your phone, you're going to go to the county website, you're going to go down to that precinct building you voted at, and you're going to hold your phone up against the wall next to the paper that's right there. And then you might even pick up the phone and call Mary and say, hey, Mary, I just want to confirm these results with you because I saw you worked the election at the precinct. And you go down the results and Mary says, yep, those are right. Can you imagine bringing that responsibility and accountability back to us, all that transparency back to us? It's a no-brainer. And everyone then can be responsible and be able to do it. And you keep track of the voting type differences. You keep the mail-in ballots separate from the in-person ballots. That way, if there's some funny business, we see where it is. We don't want them all laundered into one big pile. That's what our whole election system is now. That's why you have countywide voting. And that's why you have central tabulation centers. It's a big laundering option. It's a vote ballot laundering operation is what it is. Bring it back out so they can't be laundered anymore. This here is the website I put together with the list of the basics of what we need to do. Here's our target, right on basedelections.org/PEP. It's another way to get to this site, Hand Count Roadshow. And if you click the big red button, it'll take you right to that list that I just went over. And this is what it looks like. It's called the Progressive Election Platform. Yes, we can use their words against them. This is a platform to put elections back in the hands of the people. I list why it's important, and I list all of the stuff. Voter registration, absentee, mail-in, the whole deal, all the way down. Help me get that platform out in everyone's hands. Talk to your legislators, share it with them. Share it all over Facebook, share it on Twitter. If we get the whole country talking about the PEP platform, how we secure our elections and put it back in the hands of the citizens, at least it will spur conversation. And then people, the right person might pick up one of these ideas and say, oh, that's actually a good idea. I hadn't thought of that. And then that way, when we do have the solution come maybe on a national level, we're all talking about the right stuff. That's why I put it out there. I wanted to give people, here's our goal. And if I miss something, you come to me and tell me, and I'll consider it. And I might put it on here if it's a good idea. I have. In fact, last week I just added a few things that the citizen brought me. I thought was a great idea. So I'm always constantly trying to fortify it. And also, you just saw my full presentation pretty much. Now, it's morphed over the years. Usually I do 5 or 6 hours. But this 3-hour one is pretty darn good, and I think I got a lot of stuff put into this. Now, I didn't get into 5th generation warfare and stuff like that. If I had more time, I would also do that and get into some of those other components of manipulation. But I wanted to at least make sure you were fully aware of the technological manipulation that we are suffering right now. If you want to watch other presentations, you can definitely watch them. If you go to handcountroadshow.org and scroll down, you'll see all my other visits. I've been a busy, busy person. I am not paid by anyone, just so you know. I don't do this for any organization or any agency or anything like that. I'm just a citizen from Colorado. I'm doing this out of what's left in my savings account. So don't think that I have an ulterior motive here. I just want to restore our nation. And if you click on that orange or that purple button at the bottom left, it'll take you to my last presentation, which is Arapahoe County. It's a couple presentations ago, but it was also a very good 3-hour. I think this one might actually be a little bit better because I was able to get into a few other topics. And I'll probably fix that button so it shows this one in the future. But send this link to other people so they can also learn from this. Because if you think you learned something here, chances are someone else that watches this will learn something as well. And we have an education problem here. We need people to understand where we're at, or we'll never fix it. And if you're the only ones that think we need to fix it, it's going to be a little bit of work for you in Pueblo. But can you imagine if 1,000 people understood? If this room was full of people, can you imagine how many more people we'd have on the team of getting this fixed? Grow that group and work with Pam to do it. So 19 months I spent on the road prior to the 24 election doing this exact thing county by county. And then after I do this, I go and talk to officials. I go talk to commissioners. I talk to your sheriff. I talk to city council. I'll talk to anyone, your clerk. So that's what I'm going to do tomorrow morning. I'm going to wake up, and then I'm going to go down to your county offices, and I'm going to just go knock on doors, and I'm going to see who I can talk to and just sit down for a few minutes with. I'm going to do my best. I don't know if everyone will meet with me, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try to meet with your chief of police. If anyone knows your chief, please set me up a meeting. I know that what the statement he made about the blood of his officers being on the steps of the Capitol, and I totally agree with that. And I want your chief of police to understand how this manipulation is happening. It's really important for as many people in influential positions as possible to understand this con. So what I'm going to do, in May 31st, I knew that we didn't get far enough to fix this. So I am going to blow the rest of my savings, and I'm going to get in my trailer and my truck that I bought, and I'm going to head back out on the road. I'm going to leave Colorado on the 31st of May. And I'm going to hit one more county on my way out of here, Montezuma. They've asked me to set up a presentation with them. And then I'm going to go through Utah. I'm going to go through Nevada. I'm going to go to California because a whole bunch of people from California are begging me to bring this presentation to them and help talk to their officials. So I'm going to spend a month in California. I'm going to go up through Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, all the way on down, and I'll hit Oklahoma by about December of this year. So I'm going to spend the last part of the year doing that route, and then I'm going to take a little breather for a couple hours, and I'm going to jump and head east. So I'm going to go try to hit all the eastern states. I'm going to stay down south during the winter months because my furnace doesn't work very well, and I'd like to not freeze my butt off again. And so I'm going to head out east, and then I'm going to head up north and east because I've never been up there before. And I've got people all over the country now asking me to visit them. So I'm going to spend the next year doing that, and fighting everything with every last ounce I can until the 26 midterms, because it's that important that we get these changes made. Now, I'm also working on some backup plans. If we can't get all the movement that we need to, if we can't hit that target, which I know it's not realistic to think we're going to hit the target right away. I know this. I'm still working on contingency plans B, C, and D. And there's things we can do to inhibit the cheating, minimize the cheating, control the cheating as much as possible in order to have as many wins as possible so eventually we can reclaim this country. Yes, sir?
It
Okay, here's what I need. If you guys know anyone that lives in any of these states along this route, please have them go to handcountroadshow.org, take action, and request a visit. I need people to request a visit. It'd be awful lonely driving all these miles at 8 miles per gallon, by the way, which luckily fuel prices have come down thanks to you know who. But it's still very expensive for me to travel, and I'm spending thousands and thousands, almost a month, just pulling this trailer all along on this journey I'm going. So I don't want to go through a county and not stop and do a presentation and make an impact to the people. So if you know someone that lives in any of these states, please have them request a visit. I want to, if I'm going to go out with a ball of flames here with the rest of what I've saved up, I at least want to make a massive impact in this country as I do that. So I'm going to do my best to last as long as possible. So I live frugally. So what I'll do on this trip is also I'm going to talk about the bribery, the blackmail, the threats, political manipulation, mainstream media, social media, technology, big tech, public education, and the selection placement. And I want to spend about 3 or 4 days in each county really hanging out with the grassroots there and all of the commissioners and et cetera. I do everything I can while I'm there. Big impact is what I'm looking for. So you guys got to learn about the election ecosystem today. And again, there's my presentation to share. I did not get into 5th generation warfare. That's another hour. But you can buy these books, and then you will understand what you need to about 5th generation warfare. That's what we're in right now. These are some of the tactics they're using against us. And if you want to reach a level of awareness, like another notch above where you are right now, buy these books and read them. General Flynn and Boone Cutler wrote the series. The first book on the left is session 1. Buy that book and read it. It'll take you about an hour, and you will go, oh my gosh, I now understand what's happened over the past 20 years. And when you see stuff happening in the near future, like weeks and months, you'll know exactly why you're seeing what you're seeing. It's the playbook of these people, these sick people, what they're doing to us. Book 2 is how AI has been used to manipulate us already. You have all been manipulated by AI, and you don't even know it. And it's what they're going to be doing in the future with AI as it changes as well. And it's going to take over a whole lot of stuff. So if you're not aware of it, it's going to take you over in a way. So read that session 2. It's really good. And then, of course, session 3 is the role of the church. The reason why they tried to destroy the church before they did all this is because they knew if there was a strong church that they would not have been able to take over a country and bring all this evil everywhere. So they really, really tried to take out a lot of our churches. So the church can fix all this. And I happen to notice I'm standing in one right now. And what we need to do is resurrect our churches. We need to fill them back up. We need to instill faith in everyone's hearts, bring God back into everything, and just crush this evil that thought it was going to win, and actually create true happiness for everyone. And we can do that. We just have to take a step forward. It's going to take work. Every one of you is going to have to put work in. You can't just sit here and listen to this and say, okay, we fixed it. The work begins tomorrow. And you're going to all get with Pam because she's going to lead you. So she'll help direct you. I figure a few of you are passionate about wanting to fix this now. She'll help lead you. And I will help every way I can to lead her so she can effectively lead you. And we got little groups all throughout Colorado. We're all going to start working together. So on the Hand Count Roadshow, I'm also go over enemy tactics and operational security. I get into lots of other details in my longer presentations. So to act, you got to map people out that are a problem. You got to map out the organizations that are a problem. You got to map out the laws that are a problem and what you need to change. We're going to expose the enemy. We're going to educate the public. And we're going to replace all the bad actors in our communities and in all these influential positions. We're going to replace them with good people, good, God-fearing people. I need leaders and soldiers. And if you know anyone that wants to help but just doesn't want to lift a finger, but they happen to want to donate, I will gladly accept donations. I just don't ask for them. And if they want to help in some indirect way, they can keep me going for the next 2 years. Every little bit does help. I'm fine accepting anything that anyone wants to give. Skill sets. I need people that can research, that can perform public information requests, that can do some legal stuff. Paralegals are great. Who can make phone calls, people that can fundraise, people that can organize meetings, create flyers and signs. Pam is great at that, by the way. people that can send emails out, people that can do social media posts. I've got stuff that can be done. If you want to do some stuff on the side that will make an impact, one person can make an impact, you come to me, I can give you a little project, the social media projects that you can do that will start creating the influence necessary to fix this across the country. I've figured out how to do it. So your immediate call to action right now is to sign up for my newsletter, at least at handcountroadshow.org. Like, pick up your phone, go to handcountroadshow.org, and it'll pop up with your email address. Put it in so I can keep you up to date. And then your immediate call to action is this. When you get home, you're going to get with Pam Pohl, okay? You're going to build a local citizen network, and you're going to protect your county by reclaiming your elections. We are going to do this. You are going to do it. We're going to do it together. Dr. Frank is coming on April, looks like 15th. Is that right? It says 15th. Maybe that's a typo. That might be a typo. 12th, I'll fix that. He just said that to me right before this. Try to go to that. Pam's going to let you know when and where that is. Go to that. Dr. Frank, I've met back in May of 21. And when he showed me his data, that was the last piece of the puzzle I needed to know exactly what they were doing across the board. It was Dr. Frank. I was with him side by side in a room, and he was showing me up on an easel what he found. So he's entertaining as heck, way more entertaining than I am. He's a quirky, cool math teacher. He's the math teacher everyone wished they had. He's a great presenter. He's really smart. You will, and if you haven't met him, you will really enjoy it, and he's brilliant. All right, let's see here. Yep, we signed up for that. We get that one. That was an extra one. Okay, and the bonus for this, I wrote a briefing for Jim Jordan, and I had it handed to him the day before the weaponization hearing started on May 13th of 2024 last year. Wow, time flies, my gosh. If you want to see that briefing, you want to read it, what I had handed to him and a bunch of other members of Congress, you can read it by going to my website, handcountroadshow.org, click on the trailer. And when you click on the trailer, you'll get to download that PDF. So with that, I'm only 18 minutes past 3 hours, so that's not bad. That's the end. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yes. Oh, where's the microphone? There, it's coming. It's coming. Oh, and I'm going to take this video. I've got cameras here, and they got cameras there. It was live streamed. I'm also going to take the recording, and we'll put this up. So anyone that missed it is going to be able to rewatch it. You rewatch it or watch it for the first time. But this was a great presentation. You guys are awesome. And text me. Anyone that I talk to here that wants to talk more, just text me. I'm busy at 7 o'clock tonight. Is that right? It's 7 o'clock. I got an hour and a half, and I've got a really important meeting at 7 o'clock between 7 and probably 8:30. I'm available before and after that, and then I'll be here all day tomorrow. So anyone of you that knows anyone in town that you can nudge me in for a meeting, network, and let's make that happen. I'm here for you all day tomorrow. Okay, all right.
Okay, thanks everyone for coming, and I'm going to put this basket on the back
thank you.
table as you walk out. If you'd like to give a donation to Mark, and also you can donate on his website, handcountroadshow.org. And on your survey, make sure you do your surveys. If you want to connect with Dr. Frank next month, just click the box. Click. You can't click on the paper. Check the box on the papers, on the survey, and I'll get in touch and tell you what the dates are, et cetera.
Thank you to this church and you guys that helped run the AV and everything.
Greg.
Wow, thank you guys. This is a great venue. I appreciate it a million times. All right, absolutely.
I wanted to ask you.
Yes.
When did the Dominions come out? When did they start using Dominion?
About 20 years ago.
Okay.